Chapter 4440, Temple of Life, Sixth Mountain. Inside the sword unparalleled manner. The misty waves on the great lake of Yunza are small, a little white mist rises from the surface of the lake, and then spreads out. The water and the sky are all colored. Wu Jianshuang and Bloodwave Supreme were sitting on the bow of an awning boat. The awning boat automatically swayed on the lake without wind, drawing two long, calm watermarks. The three sword-making swordsmen, Bloodwave Supreme, and Giant Axe Supreme boil tea and burn incense, but also quite elegant. The sword is unparalleled. Taro Supreme was extremely strong at that time. He was famous in all directions. His fall in the universe is not a big secret, but it rarely spreads in the universe. At first, he was afraid of spreading the truth by distorting the truth. Because of the fear of getting people's hearts frightened, all of them are at risk. Sun Xiebwa Supreme lifted up the wide, long-sleeved cuffs, raised the ceramic teapot, and poured 2 cups of tea for the swordsman and Giant Axe. The watercolor is green, and an aura is mixed with the light tea fragrance. This cup of tea is very valuable. If an ordinary mortal drink a cup, it will be able to transform into an immortal and immortal. Even if they are supreme, drinking is still a whole body, and the power is nourished. People's heart. Wu Jianwu lifted the teacup and took a sip, then frowned and asked, "Extreme blood, what does this mean?" Sun Xiebwa Supreme replied, "Taro Supreme, it was not killed by people in our universe." Jian Wushuang heard the words, and suddenly his eyes narrowed, his eyes flashed sharply. "Blood Supreme, do you mean Supreme Tai Luo died in the hands of the virtual universe?" Bloodwave Supreme nodded his head. His expression gradually swelled with a heavy expression, and said, "Yes, 300 years before the chaos, suddenly there was a group of strong men who called themselves phasing. The universe, the head of their organization, is called the Emperor. At that time, Tai Luo Supreme, who was preparing to take turns to suppress the battlefield outside the territory, happened to meet them in the universe. So, as soon as the battle broke out, Fang entered the most stalemate situation at the beginning. No one knows the specific details of that battle, only knowing that the days were like the sky, and the battle was undefeated. The Supreme Master Taro, who reached the peak of the universe, suddenly died. Subsequently, the kingdom of Tai Luo was smashed into the door, and the hundreds of millions of souls in God were killed in one fell swoop. The Supreme Tai Luo could only slap the Tai Luo divine sword into the depths of the universe before he died. Taro ruins. Then it was Lord Elder God who arrived and killed the Bite organization. But it is worth mentioning that the Emperor was the one who won 3 defeats against Lord Elder God without defeat, with the phasing organization retreat safely. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's brow frowned tightly. His eyes blinked constantly. Wu Tailuo's supreme power. Others don't know much, but Jian Wushuang and him have been in the trial space for thousands of years. He can't understand it. Jane is a dictatorship of eternity. Kendo shines in the power of the night. Few people can overcome him in the universe, let alone kill him. There is no chance of escape. Sun Xiebwa Supreme continued to say, Jian Wushuang, speaking of the disaster that occurred in the Joey star field that year, it seems to be the phasing organization. Is it them? Wu Jianso suddenly panicked, and his eyes skyrocketed. In that year, the annihilation disaster of Joey Star Field naturally remembered that if it wasn't for the heartbreaking Supreme and others who arrived, I'm afraid he would fall into Joey Star Field that day. I just heard that the group of mysterious black robes seemed to have come for the sake of their master Xian. Wu Jian's thoughts flashed like electricity, and he instantly grasped several key points. Devour the Emperor, the virtual universe, the extraterrestrial battlefield, the of the universe, and his own Master Schwani, these characters, who seem to have nothing to do with each other, are invisible, with a faint line connecting them together. At the grand event of the universe, the of the universe told him that his Master Schwani was his old friend and was in the next big picture. So, what is the purpose of this overall situation? His Master Schwani, what identity does he play in the overall situation? His sword is unparalleled. What is his identity? Wu Jianwushuang fell into silence, and his eyes kept thinking. He began to remember himself and Schwani, from the beginning to the present, thinking about the bits and pieces of Schwani. After a long time, Jian Wushuang took a long sigh, with countless confused colors in his eyes, looked up at Wudi's starry sky, and shook his head. "Master, what do you want?" Blood Supreme and Great Axe noticed this scene and looked at each other and said, "What is wrong with you?" "Nothing." Jian Wushuang turned his head and smiled at them. After a short while, Supreme Bloodwave and Great Axe Supreme left. Wu Jianshou sat alone at the bow of the awning boat, frowning into a long thought. Fujun, the cold, frosty figure, appeared on the back of Jian Wushuang, stretched out his slim hand, and gently smoothed the word Chuan wrinkled between Jian Wushuang's eyebrows. "What's wrong? Is there something bothering you? You can talk to your body. Maybe you will have an idea." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and shook his head and smiled. "Shuang, I'm fine, don't worry about me." After finishing talking, Jian Wushuang extended his finger and gently scratched on the frosty nose bridge, stood up, and shot into the manor. He had a hunch. Maybe it won't be long before the universe will be chaotic again. Before that, the only thing he could do was to improve his strength. As long as the strength is achieved, whatever the virtual universe is, it is better to eat the organization or a chess game played by Master Zuanchuan, when the soldiers come to cover the water and cover the soil. Only strength is the foundation of standing in this world. Wu Jian stepped into the practice room and opened a long retreat. For him, it is not difficult to break through the medium supreme, just need to push the boat down the water and continue to condense the power. After he broke through the middle extreme, his strength will reach a qualitative leap. In an instant, 3,000 years have passed. In these 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang has continually condensed his strength and cultivated steadily, finally pushing the elementary supreme realm to the top. For ultra-perfect chaotic creatures such as Jian Wushuang, breaking through the barriers of the great realm will be 10 million times more difficult than ordinary people. But breaking through such small realms is much easier. Jian Wushuang is about to take that step, ready to impact the medium supreme. A decree of the gods of the universe suddenly came to the temple of life. The sword is unparalleled. The of the universe has orders, come to the supreme temple. The sound of Sun's Weibo's supreme sound rang in Jian Wushuang's mind. Okay. Wu Jianshou slowly opened his eyes, and there was a flash of fascinating light in his eyes. Chapter 44-41. Why did the order of Lord Elder God reach the Temple of Life at this time? Wu Jian's brows frowned, but from the tone of the Bloodwave Supreme, he could hear the emergency. As a result, Jian Wushuang did not delay and flickered into the manor. He came to the Supreme Temple, where there was a solemnity. The Supreme Bloodwave Supreme and the Great Axe Supreme stood respectfully and acted like a bow. In the first hall of the hall, a young boy with red lips and white teeth was standing with a roll of edict. This person is one of the disciples under the seat of the Colossus, Lan Su. Jian Wushuang, I've seen Lord Lan Su. Qi Jian Wushuang glanced at Shuebo Supreme and others, then bowed slightly. Xingli said, "Warrior Supreme, no need to be polite." Wu Lansu smiled kindly at Jian Wushuang. He was quite polite to Jian Wushuang, who was about to become a brother-in-law with him at the cosmic race. Wu Jianwushuang nodded, and then asked, Master Lan Su, you have spared no effort this time to come to the Temple of Life. What's the matter? Tong Lansu replied, This time when we come to the Temple of Life, we really need to discuss things. Speaking of this, Lan Su paused with a look of solitude on his face, looked around the hall, and solemnly said, There is a riot in the extraterritorial battlefield. As soon as he said this, the audience was shocked. What? The extraterrestrial battlefield is rioting? Isn't the extraterrestrial battlefield suppressed by the Lord God of God himself? How could a riot occur? The virtual universe has been peaceful with us for tens of thousands of chaos periods. How could this happen suddenly? What's the situation over there? Are people from the virtual universe coming soon? Didn't it happen? And we will start the war again? Everyone was disappointed, even the Supreme of Bloodwave, and so on. Their faces changed slightly. Looking at this scene, Lan Su's face eased a little, and he shook his head and said, You don't need to be so nervous. The situation is not serious enough. There is my master sitting in the outfield battlefield, and there is no wave in a short time. Hearing this, everyone just breathed a long sigh of relief. Wu Jianshuang frowned and asked, Master Lan Su, why did you come to the Temple of Life this time? Lan Su glanced at Jian Wushuang and smiled back. This is the case. This time, the extraterrestrial battlefield riots. A large number of virtual cosmic virtuosos have come out in a row, and the Lord God cannot do everything himself, but only by virtue of the supremacy of the extraterritorial battlefield is no longer enough to suppress this riot. It is too strenuous. Then, Master God of the Gods asked me to deploy manpower in the universe. Everyone who has the supreme power in the martial arts must send at least one supreme power to the extraterritorial battlefield to suppress the riots. There are 2 places in the Temple of Life for the battle. That is, your palace must send 2 strong men in the supreme realm to the extraterritorial battlefield. As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the Temple of Life looked at each other face to face, and there was no sound for a while. Wu Lansu is not in a hurry to ask for an answer now. Shun Sheng said, This matter is related to the safety of the universe. I also ask you to set aside life and death and help the gods of the universe to end this riot. Well, now I have to go to the Dragon Clan, and I have to inform the major forces, so I will take a step. 10 years later, I will wait for you at the ferry in Xianyang Starfield and rush to the extraterritorial battlefield together through the cosmic passage. After I finished speaking, Lan Su didn't stay much, so she strode away. I can see that this time, although not so serious, it is urgent. After Lan Su left, everyone in the Supreme Temple frowned and didn't speak. Don't say that Lord Elder God has issued an order in person. Even if Lord Elder God has not issued an order, they will definitely go to the extraterritorial battlefield. As Lan Su said, this matter is related to the security of the entire universe. Once the riots in the extraterrestrial battlefields cannot be suppressed, a large number of virtual cosmic virtuosos flood into the universe, and then they will cover their nests. And will they be finished? The 2 supremes of this faction went to the extraterritorial battlefield, but it became a problem. Now the supreme governance, the Palace of Life, is awaiting revival, and it lacks the pillars. If something happens to the people sent to it, the Palace of Life may be completely shattered like a collapsed dike. After a short while, the Bloodwave Supreme groaned and said, The battlefield outside the territory is extremely dangerous and murderous. If the ordinary Supreme went forward, I would be afraid of 9 lives, which is too dangerous. He froze. It seems that Sun Shuebu Supreme has made a decision and said, So, this time, the 2 people who went to the extraterrestrial battlefield will go to me and Tian Sun Supreme, and the giant axe will be responsible for guarding the Palace of Life. As soon as this remark came to an end, the Tentacles Supreme next to him nodded. Both of them are top-level Supreme practices. Even if they meet the half-step Invincible Supreme, they have the power of a battle, and the two have been fighting side by side for many years. Then they can support each other on the battlefield and have a care. Regarding this, the giant axe has no objection. He has not recovered from the injury, and he can recover the injury while sitting in the Palace of Life. I decided that this decision was about to take effect when the Supreme of the Blood Waves and the Supreme of the Heavens decided to pack up and go to Xianyang Starfield Ferry. Qi Jian Wu Shuang and Jiu Jie Wang stepped forward with a tacit understanding with the same voice. My sword is unparalleled / I am the king of 9 robberies, and I went to the extraterrestrial battlefield to fight for the Temple of Life. As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone in the audience was surprised. Sun Shiweb was supreme, laughed absurdly. You two have a tacit understanding. Jian Wu Shuang and Jiu Jie Wang also couldn't help looking at each other, and their eyes flashed with surprise. Wu Jianshou shook his head and converged his thoughts. Extreme blood, this extraterrestrial battlefield. Even if Lord Lan Su is not here today, I am ready to go. Oh, Blood Wave Supreme heard his words, narrowed his eyes. As early as when Jian Wushuang asked him about the battlefield of the outer world and the fall of Tai Luo Supreme, he had some conjectures in his mind, just because Jian Wushuang had something to do with this virtual universe person. However, the sword's unique talent is the ultimate hope for the future rise of the Temple of Life. If there's any good in the extraterritorial battlefield, sword unparalleled, that extraterrestrial battlefield is too dangerous. What you have to do now is to grow slowly. Blood Supreme just wanted to refuse, and saw Jian Wu stepping forward in 2 directions. Shunshin said, Blood Supreme, if it is dangerous now with my strength, I am afraid that the risk is even lower. Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang's eyes shot strong confidence. Sun Shiweb was supreme, heard the words, first a moment, then immediately dumb. He almost forgot that Jian Wushuang now can invincibly exist. He is a lot stronger than himself. Bloodwave Supreme is not an indecisive person. When I think of it, my eyes flicker and I take a deep breath and say, also the sword is unparalleled. You will go to the Shrine of Life on our behalf and rush to the extraterritorial battlefield to suppress the riots. Chapter 44-42, Sword Unparalleled, Take Command. Suddenly, Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, and he arched his hand. This time he went to the extraterritorial battlefield. He was bound to get it, one to suppress the riots, and the other to himself. Regarding Master Xuani, he had long been guessing. With Xuani's strength, if Xuani is still in this universe, I am afraid that there will be absolutely no news at all. It is very likely that Xian Yi was in the extraterritorial battlefield. Alas, he should inquire about the news of the Emperor. Finally, his strength has now fallen into the bottleneck stage. Even if he stays in the universe blindly, he will not be of much use. Whether it is the Diwu Temple or the Dragon Clan, he has an invincible supreme power. With his current strength, he can't counteract what threats do these 2 top forces have. Instead of that, it would be better to go to the extraterritorial battlefield and enhance the strength in the Battle of Killings. Besides that, there is one more point, is that Ice Supreme, Wu Jian Wushuang, remembers that the Emperor Taishu said before leaving that he would take the Bingyu Supreme to the extraterritorial battlefield. Qi Jian Wushuang once swears to heaven, this life and this world will cut the Ice Supreme and others, otherwise he will fall to Jiuyo, vow not to be human. His sword is unparalleled, never just talking. Extreme blood, what about me? The king of Jiu Jie said beside him. He saw that Shiweb was supreme arranged Jian Wushuang, but did not mention himself. And he frowned. Blood Wave Supreme glanced at King Jiu Jie, and he could not help but grin at the corner of his mouth. King Jujia was also a stubborn character, afraid that he would not be allowed to stop, and could not stop, but nodded helplessly. Okay, you and swords are perfect, just go together. King of 9 robberies, take your life. Suddenly, a slight delight flashed in the eyes of King Jujia, and he arched his hand. Well, now that this matter is finalized, let's step back. Sun Xiebo rubbed his eyebrows, and his face was a little tired. Now, Gvu is sleeping, he is in charge of the Palace of Life, and he is really tired. Yes, everyone retreated. When he walked to the gate of the Supreme Temple, King Jujia glanced at Jian Wushuang and smiled lightly. Jian Wushuang, the strength of this seat is not as good as you now, but we can compare them, who will be in the extraterritorial battlefield. There are more false slayers in the slain virtual universe. Wu Jianshuang heard the words and could not help showing an interested look in his eyes, and nodded, okay. Well, Jian Wushuang, Xianyang Starfield is not close here. You and I will go back and prepare each other. And let us go together 1 year later. After a few words of embarrassment, the two broke up separately. After returning to the manor in the 6th mountain range, the situation that Jian Wushuang is about to go for an expedition told Long Rushuang that suddenly Long Rushuang couldn't help it. Fortunately, Cold as a Frost is not a man of arrogance. Despite the reluctance in his heart, he had to instruct Jian Wushuang in his mouth to be more careful. Wu Jian saw nothing but sighed. Over the years, the two have always been together and separated, with few chances of intimacy. Also, in the last year, I will be with you. Wu Jianwushuang made a decision in his heart. 1 year later, outside the Palace of Life, Wu Jianshuang and King Juya bid farewell to the Bloodwave Supreme and others who came to see him off, and immediately drove the spacecraft towards the Xianyang Ferry in Xianyang Starfield. On the deck of the cosmic boat, Yan Jian Wushuang stood side by side with King Jojia. One was in a wide black robe, wearing a hood, blocking most of his face, and the other was in white clothes, winking with snow, his eyes blanched, and his white hair hanging down. The two are black and white, but they are the two most arrogant in the universe. Sword unparalleled, there is almost no cultivation of the vein in the extraterrestrial battlefield, and they can release a strange light wave, which is not easy to deal with. The king of Jojia took the hand and said lightly, although he is arrogant, he is not reckless. In the past year, he has also collected a lot of news about the virtual universe. The more I know, the more dignified and angry he is. The monks of the imaginary universe are cruel and addictive by nature, and treat the people in their universe almost to the extreme. I do indeed know how many cosmic strongmen are killed to death in every chaotic era. Strange light waves. Wu Jianshou raised an eyebrow, and a curious expression appeared in his eyes. Yes. King Jiucai nodded his head and replied, the monks of the virtual universe have an associated supernatural power, which is the weird light wave. We call this weird light wave virtual explosion. Because of the existence of this virtual explosion, the vagrants of the imaginary universe are often better than the monks in the same realm of our universe. Wu Jianshuang nodded, but he didn't care. In the same realm, no matter how strong the monk in this virtual universe, Jian Wushuang did not think he would be stronger than him. This is his confidence. Besides that, the powerful men of the void universe look strange, with 3 heads and 6 arms, and headless axemen. In short, they look more like evil, but one thing is that they are very good at identifying them. Every person who has a virtual universe has long marks on their shoulders. I do know who is below the Supreme, but above the Supreme, there is a long mark on the shoulder of the Supreme, and there are 2 long marks on the Medium Supreme, and so on. The vagrants of invincible supreme strength are 5 long marks. The king of 9 emperors continued to speak. Understood. Wu Jian Wuxuang nodded. Alas! As the two discussed, they flew towards the Xianyang starfield, and the speed was not slow, as if a meteor crossed the sky. Xingqian circulation, the galactic circle. 10 years passed in a snap. Sword unparalleled. Xuanda starfield is ahead. Wang Zhujian looked up and looked forward and said, I saw a vast star field formed by countless nebulae and many planets and stars, and in front of everyone I could see… Well, let's go, they should be here. Wu Jian Wuxuang nodded. Immediately, the two walked down from the cosmic boat, put away the cosmic boat, and walked towards the ferry in Xianyang star field. Xianyang Ferry is also a gathering place of many cosmic channels in the universe, extending in all directions, connecting the universe's major star domains and top forces. The two just arrived at Xianyang Ferry and saw Lan Su and others waiting on that knee. Huh, Supreme Master? Jiuzai Supreme? Life Shrine sent two people this time? Sensing the approach of Jian Wuxuang's breath, Lan Su slowly opened her eyes to look, and her eyes flashed slightly surprised. Wu, Jian Wuxuang, and King Zhoujia are now the most precious cards in the Palace of Life. He thought that this time, the Palace of Life would not send two of them. King of Warriors / King of the Ninth Calamity met Lord Lan Su. Qi Jian Wuxuang and Zhou Jie Wang arched their hands towards Lan Su, then looked around, looking at the several figures standing next to Lan Su, a sneer gradually drawn from the corners of his mouth. I did expect that I could meet many acquaintances here. Chapter 44-43. At this moment, the young man standing next to Lan Su with twin horns in his head, wearing a gold robe and a sullen face, was not Long Qing or who? Sword unparalleled. At the same time, Wu Longqing also noticed Jian Wuxuang, and suddenly Li Guang's sword in his eyes, murderous. Next to him, there are two dragons, 4 generations of dragons. However, the strength of these two people is much worse than Longqing. He is the sword unparalleled. It's him, a rudimentary elementary supreme. Lets us dragons so prosperous. How many shots have you made? The two dragons glanced at each other, their eyes flashing with suspicion. It's been a long time, but I miss you so much. Qi Jian Wuxuang narrowed his eyes to Longqing and sneered at the corner of his mouth. Compared with Bingyu Supreme, his hatred for Longqing is far more. At that time, he was chased by Longqing Crazy and almost fell into his hands. He stomped that foot and constantly trampled his body to destruction. Of course, if it weren't for this person, he would not have met the Patriarch's ancestors and obtained the Chaos Patriarch. Okay, sword unparalleled. I thought I wanted to kill you. At least after 10 million years, I didn't expect you to participate in this expedition outside the territory. Wu Longqing looked at Jian Wuxuang. His eyes flashed cold, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Sword unparalleled. Wait until the extraterritorial battlefield. We have fun. After finishing speaking, Longqing turned his eyes and looked at the King of 9 Calamities next to Jian Wuxuang again, and said with a cold voice, There is also the King of 9 Calamities. When you were at the end of the universe race, you asked me what was right. Right? These account books are always remembered. Wait until the extraterritorial battlefield. You see how this book accompanied you two to play. Wang Zhujiao Wang looked indifferent, did not raise his eyelids when he heard the words, and calmly replied, Is it worthy of you? You. Suddenly, Longqing's heart was furious. Her forehead was violently jumping. Jian Wuxuang couldn't help but look funny. The King of 9 Calamities seemed indifferent and whispered, but once he uttered his voice, he could hit the pain point directly. Lan Su frowned and said, You are all the elites of our universe, in the middle of our suppression of the riots. How can the external enemies not be annihilated before they are annihilated? After a pause, Lan Su said in a deep voice, "Dear everyone, now the enemy, I hope you all put down your old prejudices and kill the outside world. Otherwise, if I find out you have affected the battle because of personal conflicts, just blame me for reporting to heaven and telling Master Zeus." As soon as this remark came to an end, although everyone didn't speak again, their faces were still chaotic. Wu Lansu is not a senior supreme practitioner, but if it wasn't for the Lord God standing behind him, he would have been slapped with a slap. When Lan Su saw this, she had to smile bitterly in her heart. She shook her head helplessly and said, "Okay, wait a minute, and then we have to set off. You are the first group to go to the extraterritorial battlefield. I have to come back and adjust the second group." Everyone nodded and stopped speaking. Then, one after another, people came from all over the universe. Wu Jian Wushuang has encountered many acquaintances, such as the Zhou Xing son of Zhou Xing Holy Land, and the Mo Luo Yen Gu of the Mo Luo family, and a Supreme of Diwu Temple. In the last two wars, the Temple of Life suffered heavy losses, and the Diwu Temple was not much better. Almost the Supreme realm was dead. It is very rare to be able to send a High Supreme at this moment. The Supreme of the Diwu Temple was still high-spirited. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he immediately lowered his head like a mouse when he saw a cat, for fear that Jian Wushuang would bother him. Today's sword, Wushuang's sword, is invincible in 2 major steps and has long been famous, not comparable to the past. After 3 months, Tong Lansa looked at the crowd, nodded, and said, "Well, the first batch of candidates have arrived, and we can start." I saw, at the moment, Xianyang Ferry scattered 11 Supreme. The 11 Supremes are extremely powerful. In addition to Jian Wushuang being the elementary Supreme and Zhou Jiawang being regarded as the medium Supreme, the rest are the lowest and are the High Supreme. Next moment, I saw Lan Su flip her right hand, and a small white flag with 4 handles appeared. "Go with," he whispered, and suddenly 4 small white flags shot into the sky, and then formed an enchantment. Ding! In the void, the rays of light suddenly flew, and beams of light were drawn side by side to form a matrix. Rumble! Immediately afterwards, the boundless void was torn, and a vortex was formed violently. In the center of the vortex, a golden beam of light fell, forming an aperture at the ferry. "Let's go." Su Lansu turned back and said something to Jian Wushuang, and others then stepped forward and shot into the vortex of the sky first. Wu Jian Wushuang and others nodded their heads, all of which were working divine power, turned into a streamer and shot into the vortex. Alas! Moments later, the vortexes closed and the sky cleared again. The figures of Wu Jianshuang and others have disappeared. When time passed, Baiku passed the gap. In a flash, 100 years passed. In this century, Lan Su led Jian Wushuang and others riding the cosmic passage all the way, traveling through the stars and rushing towards the extraterritorial battlefield. They are extremely fast, often just flashing and disappearing into the cosmic channel. When they appear again, they are already out of several star fields. Gradually, they completely moved away from the center of the universe and reached extremely remote parts of the universe. On a desolate planet, 11 supreme figures such as Lan Su, Jian Wushuang, Zhou Jiawang, and Long Qing jumped out of the void. Here it is. Everyone walked out of the cosmic passage and looked around. I saw that this star was incapable of growing. The divine power was extremely thin, and there were void storms everywhere. In front of this star, there is a wind-howling zone, a black wind like a sword roaring around and shattering the void. In the midst of the faintness, You can still see in this stern wind zone there is a powerful and fierce starry giant lurking, and his eyes are constantly emitting red light. Lan Su glanced up at the front and said, "You, through this area of the 9 secluded winds, is the place where our universe is stationed in the extraterrestrial battlefield. There is no cosmic passage here, and we must rely on our own strength to cross." The words fell. Everyone nodded. The breath of these starry beasts is not the ultimate dominating strength. Even if they are the most powerful, they are barely forced to reach the supremacy, and the presence of the highest supremacy naturally will not be seen by everyone. Among the crowd, Long Qing, who walked at the end, first glanced at the windward area in front of him, and then looked at the back of Jian Wushuang and King Jiujia again, and licked his lips. 9 Heavenly Emperors. Chapter 44-44. Let's go. Tong Lansu glanced back at them, and immediately stepped on, turning into a streamer, first shot towards the windy area. Yen, Jian Wushuang, and others followed closely, like a sharp knife, stabbed directly into the Fengfeng area. Alas! In the howling zone, black howling winds tore the void, and terrible sound explosions continued to sound around. This black howling wind is enough to tear the monks below the Supreme directly into pieces. Even if they cross the Supreme, they feel a slight pain. Fortunately, they are the mainstays in the universe, and they are the big names who dominate the party. Although these black squall winds can cause trouble to them, they are just that. Wu Jian's warrior urged the chaos domination body, and the lines of God's veins flickered suddenly, and the whole body was exposed to intense golden light. The wind that was originally like a knife cutting meat suddenly became soft like a spring breeze. Roar! Roar! He stared at a giant starry sky, hiding in the howling wind, roaring and roaring. These starry beasts are all composed of meteorites. Except for the instinct to kill, there is almost no fear. Wu Jin Wushuang didn't need to draw a sword at all. He just punched out with a punch, which was to pull the force of 1,000 mountains and directly collapse an inch of starry beast. Others also used their own means of casting, and the magical powers flew and bombarded for a while, crushing a starry beast instantly. Gradually, Jian Wushuang and others gradually deepened into the deep wind belt. Lan Su walked in front, and Shun Sheng said, "Be careful. Not far away is the most dangerous place in the howling belt, with the existence of the beast master of the starry sky. If it is just one head, it is nothing, but if it causes a beast tide, it will pose a threat to us." Therefore, everyone whispered a little. No noise disturbed the existence of the beastmaster level. Everyone nodded when they heard the words and understood the heart. Alas, the people were not slow, and soon they reached the depths of the wind belt. I saw a starry beast that was several times larger than it was just now, and was asleep in the wind. There was a strong breath that was taken from them. Even if everyone was supreme, it also felt a slight dignified meaning. Tong Lanza walked in front of her and turned her back to a gesture of hush, motioning everyone not to make a sound. Suddenly, when Jian Wushuang passed by a giant monster king, Suddenly, a black light wave was shot by Long Qing, who walked at the end, and smashed into the starry monster king next to Jian Wushuang. Boom! Suddenly, the body of this star beast king burst violently, and countless black beast blood fell on Jian Wushuang's body. Howling, howling, dash. Howling, howling, dash. In an instant, the entire howling belt fell into a riot. Countless heads of giant beasts awakened, opened their eyes, and stared at Xiang Wushuang. They noticed it on Jian Wushuang and killed the same kind of breath. In a moment, countless heads of the beast king of the sky flew fiercely towards the sword, unparalleled. Long Qing. Lin Lance's face suddenly gloomed, and he looked back at Long Qing and said, "Long Qing, what do you mean?" "I said it again and again. Don't disturb this starry beast. Have you put my words in your ears? Others also frowned. This seat is not intentional, careless. Qi Longqing spread his hand and said with fearlessness, "If the of the universe is here, he will not dare to presumptuously. This blue Su is only an apprentice of the universe, and his strength is not as good as him. Although he is unwilling to offend, he cannot talk about how much fear." Huh! Wu Tai Luo's Excalibur came out of the sheath instantly. The sharp sword pressure spread. The sword had no double-sided expression, but the heart was sneer. He had long guessed that this guy, Longqing, would overshadow him here. Cut! A giant roar rushed towards the sword Wushuang. A sharp sword blade has been severely cut off. This sword slashed the entire wind-howling belt directly, and the sky was torn directly to both sides. Roar! I saw this starry monster king, who was already comparable to the supreme strength, was cut into two directly from beginning to end, and countless blood fell. However, this sword of Jian Wushuang not only did not let those starry beasts retreat, but rushed towards the sword Wushuang even more crazy. In just a few breaths, Jian Wushuang was drowned in the huge beast tide. King Zhujia, Zhu Xingxingzi, and others frowned and were about to help, and saw that Lan Su's face was not very good-looking, and said, "Don't shoot, let Jian Wushuang solve it by himself. Otherwise it will only inspire a greater beast tide. We all have to be pulled in." The words fell, and he gave Longqing a cold look, and there was a disgust in his eyes. Roar, roar! I saw the sword Wushuang submerged in the tide of beasts. The Tai Luo divine sword continued to be chopped, and each sword was taken away to take away a starry giant. Sure enough, killing can help increase the power of the Taro Excalibur. In the center of the beast tide, Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Since he got the Taro sword sheath, he found that with each killing, the power of the Taro Excalibur will be stronger, and the vertical eyes of the sword handle will become more demon. Especially the stronger the enemy's strength is, the greater the improvement of the Taro Excalibur. For example, after beheading Yuding Supreme, he felt the power of the Taro Excalibur, at least by 10%. Don't look like it is only 10%, but for today's Jian Wushuang, the power of 10% is already a huge improvement. The most important thing is that with the existence of the Taro sword sheath, he does not have to worry about the impurities that the Taro Excalibur will absorb too much. Novel affects the quality, because you only need to put them in the scabbard for 1 or 2 to warm up. These impurities will be cleared up. When I saw this starry beast, Jian Wushuang naturally saw the hunting delight, and I was still thinking about how to trigger the beast tide, and justly slaughtered to enhance the power of the Taro sword. I never imagined that Longqing would be better, and sent the beast tide directly to his hands. However, the starry beast king in this area is limited after all. After a few hours of fragrant incense, the starry beast king was slaughtered, and the ordinary starry beast did not have much effect on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang closed the sword and returned to the sheath. His expression came out step by step from the center of the beast tide. Wu Longqing looked at Jian Wushuang's unscathed appearance and could not help but feel boring. He shook his head and said, "What kind of star monster is really wasteful and useless?" Lan Su saw that Jian Shuang was okay, and he felt a little relieved, and then stared at Longqing with a cold vigilance, and said, "I would advise some people, if they bring their personal hatred to the extraterrestrial battlefield, blame me, report it directly to Master, and punish the family behind you." After I finished speaking, he snorted and led the crowd again, and led the other side across the wind. After a while, the 11 swordsmen and the Supreme Master passed through the wind band safely. A camp in the void appeared before the crowd. Chapter 44-45 arrived. Lan Su stopped and smiled slightly. We are in front of the camp. Everyone heard the words, couldn't help looking at each other. Their faces were all novel. I saw a dormitory palace sitting in the void, and from time to time I saw the supreme-class strong man hurriedly walking around. Among them, there were still a lot of supreme staleness, and the body was wounded. That's Supreme? Hasn't he disappeared hundreds of times of chaos? And that one, but the imitation Supreme, who once became famous in the universe. The entire universe thought he had fallen, and he never thought he would have been outside the battlefield. Kangwoo Supreme is the one whose body was on the verge of breaking just now, right? When Kangwoo Supreme was so strong, he suffered such a serious injury here. It seems that the vagrants of the virtual universe are very difficult to deal with. Everyone's faces were full of solemnity. At this moment, an elementary and Supreme will march in one step, arching his hand, saying, "Lord Lan Su, God of the universe, has been waiting in the main hall for a long time. As soon as I saw you, I asked you to go to the main hall to hear the announcement." Yes. Shi Lanza didn't dare to delay, and quickly took the sword Wu Shuang and others and walked towards the main hall. In the main hall, the Zhou is sitting on the throne, but now he is much more tired than he was at the cosmic event of the universe. Wu Jianshuang saw goodbye this time, and he had a little more respect in his heart. If it wasn't for the god of the cosmos, he would have turned the tide. I'm afraid that the entire universe would have been destroyed once, and destroyed by the virtual men of the virtual universe. And since these tens of thousands of chaos periods, while the of the universe was sitting in the extraterrestrial battlefield, he was taught nothing, and he has cultivated a large number of strong men in the universe. I can say that there is a large part of the reason why the entire universe can be so stable today. It must be attributed to the of the universe. I'll wait and see Lord Iogo. The 11 supreme men were all whirling, half-knelt on the ground, and said with arched hands, "No need to be polite." Wu Zhou God smiled, stretched out his hand and held it up, and suddenly a soft force poured out to lift everyone up. Immediately, the God of God looked around at everyone and said, "Everyone wants to know something about the virtual universe." Everyone nodded, groaning. Well, the old man will not go into too much details about the virtual universe. The old man will now tell you about the situation in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Speaking of this, there was a touch of tolerance on the face of Zhou God, and with a wave of his right hand, a picture suddenly emerged out of thin air and was exposed in front of everyone. In this picture, a full 3-foot-long void crack stood like a mysterious gate in the void. Countless terrifying monsters roared out of the void crack. Some of these monsters have 3 heads and 6 arms, some have huge tails, and some have eyes all over their bodies. Their breath is completely different from ordinary supremes, such as Jian Wushuang, but their strength is far beyond the supreme realm. Beyond the crack, a supreme team led by the invincible supreme, followed by the monsters to fight with these monsters. Fighting to the extreme. From time to time, you can see the powerful who has the supreme level fall from time to time. The Supreme Lord who is famous in the depths of the universe on weekdays is like a rain falling on that battlefield. No one flinched. No one was afraid. Everyone fought to the last minute. There was nothing in the hall of the grandmother, and no one thought that this extraterrestrial battlefield had reached this step, and it was so tragic. 5,000 years ago, for some reason, the void crack suddenly became large, and a large number of virtual monks poured out of it. Moreover, these virtual monks did not fight as they did before, but they held groups together. If they are wrong, they can move forward and backward freely, and they should be led by one force of the virtual universe. The god of phonology opened his voice in a deep voice, and there was a dip in his eyes. As soon as this remark was made, everyone's face changed slightly. If according to the of the universe, the virtual cosmos in attack at this moment is only from a sectarian force, then it is not difficult to calculate that the strength of the opposite universe is far beyond their imagination. After all, now they have gathered the top combat power in the universe and gathered here to resist the attack. In other words, that is, the universe itself can only compete with the sectarian power of the virtual universe. Zhou God glanced at the changing faces of everyone and continued to say, "This is not much, mainly because the crack has become bigger and bigger. I'm afraid it won't take long for this crack to open completely and form a channel. By that time, I am afraid that the opposite virtual universe will bring the whole army under pressure, and if we stay dead, the entire universe will fall into catastrophe again." Hissing, everyone took a cold breath. Among them, one of the Supremes asked, "Master God, can't you even wipe out these false men?" The god of Zhou looked at him and said in a deep voice, 3,000 years ago, a huge dark arm bound by a chain was stretched out in the void crack. The old man made a move with this dark arm. Although he forced it back, however, it can be sensed that the master of this black arm is afraid of not being weaker than the old husband, and even being able to be in the middle of the middle with the old husband. As soon as this discourse came out, it was definitely not worse for everyone. Even the sword is unparalleled, and his face is dignified to the extreme. God looked at everyone with a nervous look and couldn't help but smile and said, "Of course, the words of the husband above, there is no room for salvation. Now everyone just needs to resist the offensive of the virtual universe, and the husband will look for 7 handles." One of the ancestral soldiers of Xintian Xinqi, once the old man finds Xintian Xinqi, it is very likely to completely seal the void crack. Okay, now you know the situation in the extraterrestrial battlefields. Remember, the old man just said the word must not be rumored, otherwise the universe will be shaken and people's hearts will be upset. It crashed. After the god of Wuzhou spoke, he looked at Lan Su and asked, "Lan Su, now you break them up and put them into the 9 teams under the control of the 9 teams." Yes, the disciples obey. Shi Lansa nodded quickly and led the 11 Supremes, including Jian Wushuang, to join the 9 teams in the camp. In the battlefield outside the realm, the Zhou is in charge of overseeing the overall situation. Each major team is Invincible Supreme as the captain, and under the captain, there are 2 deputy captains. These 2 deputy captains are often half-step Invincible Supreme or top Supreme. Wu Lansu led the crowd, broke it up, and joined the 9 teams. And Jian Wushuang was assigned to the 7th team. Chapter 44-46. The 7th team's camp is in a lush bamboo forest. Ran Lansa did not send Jian Wushuang in personally, but informed Jian Wushuang that the master of the god had transmitted the sound to the 7th team, and let Jian Wushuang directly go in to report. Before he left, Lan Su also kindly reminded Jian Wushuang to say that the 7th team leader, He Yuan Supreme, had a bad temper, but his nature was not bad. If there was a discord, let Jian Wushuang be more tolerant. He Yuan Supreme, Jian Wushuang, was in a black robe, holding the slanted Tai Luo Excalibur sword handle at his waist, walking into the bamboo forest step by step. He Yuan is supreme. He is no stranger. There are not many Invincible Supremes in the universe. Almost everyone is famous and glorious. He Yuan is supreme. Among the Invincible Supreme realms, its reputation is at the forefront. If Ruo Tai Luo is said to be the first sword of all ages, then He Yuan Supreme is the first sword of all ages. He Yuan Supreme took the sword into the path, and 8,000 chaos prehistoric eras claimed the Invincible Supreme realm. However, he has always been alone, so he has not left any Taoist forces in the universe. The universe does not know much about him. A piece of bamboo leaves fell swiftly, and the more you walked in, the more open the path in the forest, It didn't take long for a bamboo house to appear in front of the sword without double sides. The door of the bamboo house opened, and more than a dozen Supremes sat cross-legged at the door. They were wearing uniform white robes. After seeing Jian Wushuang, their eyes were full of novelty, and they kept looking up and down. The name of Wujian Wushuang. Although they have been staying in extraterritorial battlefields, I have heard of it occasionally, what seems to be the first genius in the universe today, and has the power to leapfrog. In this regard, they are doubtful. Wujian Wushuang also looked at them. There were a total of 20 Supreme Masters, all of whom were above the Supreme Master, and one of them was a Supreme Master and a half-step Invincible Master. The two men's robes are also different from other Supremes. Although they are also white robes, they are sewn with gold threads at the corners of the robes. These two people should be the vice captains of the 7th team. Wu Jian's pupils shrunk slightly. Both of them have the spirit of killing. Just a glance, there was a terrifying intention. Wu Jianshou continued to raise his head and looked toward the deepest part of the bamboo forest. There was only one person standing. The man is extremely tall and burly, carrying a long black knife on his shoulders and wearing a large white scorpion. The large satin embroidered on the back of the shovel is the large 7 team's word, and his back is facing the sword. Sunda just stood there, just like Taishan Hengyue stood in front of him. A huge coercion spread. Next moment, the person slowly turned around. A face with long scars, a square face, not angry, appeared in Jian Wu's eyes. For this person, he is the captain of the 7th team, Invincible Supreme He Yuan Supreme, with the sword to enter the path. The universe has been famous for 9 days and 10 Invincible Supreme. He is full of monstrous spirits. Jian Wushuang just touched his eyes in the air and felt a terrible horror, enough to cause the suffocating cold and tension. At first glance, I know that this person is definitely a super strong man who walked out of the blood of the dead. Sword unparalleled. He Yuan Supreme raised his eyelids and looked at Jian Wushuang with an expressionless expression. He Yuan Supreme. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, and he saluted slightly. He Yuan Supreme nodded his head and said, Jian Wushuang, this seat has heard of you. You seem to be the first genius in the universe right now, no matter how amazing your talent is. This ugly word is in front. This seat needs, as a reminder, when you enter this extraterrestrial battlefield, and your majesty, you should not bring your arrogant arrogance as the first talented genius. Here, you only need to know 4 words and obey. Alive. You understand? Jian Wushuang heard his eyes narrowed and saw He Yuan's expression indifferent, so he nodded and said, Relax, I understand. Well, this is also for your good. He Yuan Supreme paid attention to Jian Wushuang's look. Seeing that Jian Wushuang was not like those other geniuses, when he heard that his face was full of disapproval, he couldn't help his face slightly nodding. Well, Rong, you take the sword unparalleled to change into the uniform of our 7th team. Yes, Captain. One of the 2 deputy captains, among them the top Supreme Xiu Wei, and a short hair of the honorary Supreme congratulations, and then looked at Jian Wushuang, smiled. Warriors Supreme, please hear. Trouble. Wu Jianshou nodded at him. A moment later, under the leadership of Rongjing Supreme, Jian Wushuang quickly changed the clothes of the 7th team. Like everyone else, he was dressed in a plain white robe, chest position, and embroidered the words 7 teams with black lines. Wushuang Supreme, the captain's words just now, don't take it to heart. The captain, he is a straightforward character, not intentional against you. Every one of us who has just entered the 7th team. The captain will click it because you are afraid that we are too aggressive and not stable enough to lose our lives on the battlefield. Rongji Supreme smiled. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head, signaled to understand. The two of them chatted while walking. Basically, Rongjing Supreme introduced them, while Jian Wushuang listened silently, nodded from time to time, and made clear, after some conversation, Jian Wushuang's impression of this honorable supreme was quite good, and did not feel that his position and cultivation were higher than Jian Wushuang. He was aggressive, but rather mild. Well, Jian Shuang, in front of you is your harem. If there is no war, the team has no restraint on individuals. You can cultivate with peace of mind, but if a war occurs, you will receive a message from Captain He Yuan. Regardless of what's on hand, be sure to come and gather as soon as possible. Otherwise, Captain He Yuan's thunder is not easy to extinguish. After Rongji Supreme said, he gave Jian Wushuang a token and strode away. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes and immediately opened the gate of his own palace, and went in one step. This dwelling house covers an extremely large area. A futon is placed in the center, and a matrix method is drawn next to the futon, which can make the monk sitting on the futon quickly recover the divine power. Creak. Wu Jianwu closed the door, sat cross-legged. His eyes flashed with thought. Whenever you come, you can rest assured. The crisis in this extraterrestrial battlefield is perilous. Even the invincible Supreme is in danger of falling. The danger is far from comparable to the universe. I am still too weak now. You must first think of ways to improve your strength. Qi Jian Wushuang silently whispered to himself, immediately closed his eyes, began to condense his strength, and hit the medium to supreme state. At the same time, King Nine Dragons, Long Qing, and others settled down. Among them, Long Qing stepped up into the sky and directly joined the third team to make up for the fallen vice-captain position of the third team and become the third team vice-captain. Time flashed, Ijia time passed. Chapter 44-47. At the same time, millions of miles away from the universe camp. It was like a vertical eye, and the cracks about 10 feet in length were constantly twisted, and a breath completely different from this universe was taken from the inside. The starry sky before this crack has turned into a Shura hell. Ha ha! A bunch of weak and poor garbage. A monster with a huge body, an upper body, no head and neck, and a human face on his stomach, laughed wildly. I bang, bang, bang. There was a scarlet shockwave, like bombs, bombarded wildly. On the left shoulder of this headless monster, there are 5 traces of long marks like claws, especially evil. 5 marks voids. The 8th team responsible for guarding the cracks in the void heard a terrifying hiss. 5 marked voids, corresponding to the invincible supreme level strong in this universe. The leader of the 8th team, Zero Wood Supreme, holds a sharp gun in his hand that can tear the sky, and his expression is dignified to the extreme. Kill this seat. The next moment, Zero Wood Supreme opened his mouth coldly, and when he stepped on it, he suddenly turned into a streamer and killed the headless monster. Yes, behind him, more than a dozen supreme, powerful men forcibly suppressed the fear in their hearts, and each performed their magical powers and rose into the sky. Babu General, eat this bunch of garbage. The headless monster saw the face growing on the chest. Sparks of excitement flashed in his eyes, stepped under the heavy footsteps, stretched out his big hand, and grabbed at the Zero Wood Supreme. Behind him, 8 shadows stepped out of the darkness. Hiss, it's delicious. A monster with 3 snake heads and a lower body is a human monster. Oh, the taste of meat is really fascinating. A monster with a very fat body like a ball, a monster with its mouth and jaw cracking all the way to the back of the ear, laughs vaguely. Kill them. A strange man who looks like a horned warrior but has thick and sharp fangs growls with excitement, and the fighting in his eyes is crazy. The 8 people are extremely weird. On their left shoulders, several long marks are shining. Among them, The man with the least long marks, a man with a pale face and black eyeshadows under his eyes, also has 2 long marks. That is to say, these 8 generals, the least powerful, are also medium to supreme. Hey! The next moment, the 8 flashed their bodies, disappeared behind the headless monster, and looted towards the 8th team. What? For a moment, countless screams sounded. A medium supreme, just rubbed by the palm of the headless monster, instantly burst into blood mist, extinct. This starry sky was directly stained with blood. Damn! Zerowood Supreme looked gloomy, and the dragon spear in his hand strangled all directions. Sun Han's gunman was enough to explode dozens of stars together. Boom! This shot exploded, and the vast sky was instantly torn open to a huge mouth, and a sound explosion sound burst instantly, as if being stabbed by Zerowood Supreme instead of a gun, but a 9-clawed dragon of arrogant world. Under this gun, the whole world must bow to his head. Ha ha ha, good job! I ate you! The headless monster laughed, even louder. There was a dark wave of destruction condensing in front of his chest. Void explode. Universe base camp. Jack! On weekdays, almost all the gods of the universe are beautiful and cheerful, but this time they have changed to the gentleness of the past, and the coldness in their eyes is extremely cold. Wu Zhou stood up, raised his head to look at the endless void. Countless avenues evolved in his eyes, and the darts flowed, forming yin and yang. His eyes directly passed through the endless void, and saw the tragic battlefield outside the cracks of void. Sun Han's voice came from his mouth. Pass the old husband's order. The 6th and 7th teams immediately go to the cracks in the universe and support the 8th team. Yes, Lan Su had a dignified expression, and knew in her heart that this time it was a big deal. 7th team camped among the daggers of Wujian Shuang. Warriors Supreme immediately got up and hurried to the main hall, 100,000 in a hurry. A voice sounded like a thunderous thunder in Jian Wushuang's head. Wu Jianzhou slowly opened his eyes, and a regret flashed across his face. Just a little bit. Just give him a little more time. He can break through the middle extreme. At that time, his combat power will be upgraded again. Nothing. Wu Jianzhou shook his head, and knew in his heart that Supreme Heiyuan was so anxious to convene them, for fear that something urgent had happened in the battlefield outside the realm. There was no more delay, and the sword unparalleled stepped out, as if he had shrunk the ground into an inch, and the whole person instantly disappeared into the palace. Everyone is here. Heiyuan's face was ugly. His eyes glanced over the team members in front of him, and he saw that everyone had gathered, which made his face look better. You, Lord Elder God, has orders. I need to rush to the void immediately. Heiyuan Supreme said in a deep voice. As soon as this remark was made, everyone could not help but look at each other. Captain, why is this so urgent? Hasn't the crack in the void been stable recently? What's wrong? A team member asked in confusion. Heiyuan heard the words and looked at him, took a deep breath, and replied, there was a riot in the fissure in the void, and a 5-mark virtual soldier led the team. What? 5 marks? Several chaos ages haven't appeared in 5 marks, have they? If the time is right, the 8th team of Zerowood Supreme is now patrolling the void crack then. Aren't they over? Everyone's face changed. Heiyuan Supreme had a heavy expression, nodded his head after hearing the words, and slowly replied, yes, according to the news from Master God, the 8th team is almost completely annihilated, leaving only Zerowood Supreme and a deputy captain, holding on with a few players. After speaking, Heiyuan Supreme took a deep breath, no more to say, and said, okay, it is not too late. You wait to set off quickly with this seat, to support the 8th team. Fight for this time from the cracks in the void. The dummies that have emerged are wiped out on the extraterritorial battlefield. Yes, everyone should be shocked, with 3 inches of war in his eyes. Wu Jianshuang also flickered his eyes full of war. He remembered that the emperor who killed Taro Supreme was the virtual universe, and he accepted the inheritance of Taro Supreme, and sooner or later had to kill the emperor and complete Taro's last wish. Therefore, he had better be familiar with the way the virtual universe fights, and is also in desperate need of a battle to become the final breakthrough in the supreme stepping stone. Go! Suppress the war. With a wave of his hand, Zhong Heiyuan took the lead and turned it into a billowing black wave, which suddenly rose into the sky and rushed towards the extraterrestrial battlefield next to the fissure in the void. Yen Jian Wushuang and others have performed their magical powers followed closely behind. Chapter 44-48. Boom boom. Ha 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 ha. Go dying, dying, dying. The headless monster Zhang chuckled, smirkly. One after another, the crimson shock waves kept blasting out from the palm of his hand. These crimson shock waves exploded in the starry sky like a bomb, and the entire starry sky trembled with scars. Fortunately, this battle occurred in this extraterrestrial battlefield. Otherwise, if it is in the depths of the universe, relying on this person's horrific power, I am afraid that even the depths of the universe, even with thousands of star fields, will be destroyed by him. Damn! The Supreme stepped on a meteorite half-knelt, and his chest violently undulated. At the moment, the shotgun that was made from the dragon bones and dragon souls of 3 generations of dragons had been cut in two. Captain, what do you do now? We can't hold on for long. Qingguang Extreme, the deputy captain of the 8th team, whispered. Zamyamu Supreme looked back, and his face suddenly became extremely embarrassed. The 8th team was almost wiped out. In addition to the deputy captain, Qingguang Supreme alive, there were only 2 players remaining. The 2 were also seriously injured. The body was on the verge of collapse and would fall at any time. Fighting power at all. He took a deep breath, and Zerowood Supreme asked in a deep voice, "Is there any news back from Lord Elder God?" Shi Qingguang nodded supremely, and quickly replied, "Captain, Lord Zhou God said that the 6th and 7th teams have been sent, and they are on their way." "Is this the 2 guys, Lucy and Heiyuan?" Zerowood Supreme heard his face a little slower, then took a deep breath, and the killer flickered in his tone. "Still a few more incense sticks. Be sure to all these monsters the burial is here." Boom! Extreme divinity, a thought of the kingdom of God. Suddenly, Zerowood Supreme clasped his hands, and countless black chains spread out around him, forming an eternal kingdom. "Come in." He Lingmu grabbed his right hand, and immediately caught the headless monster with 5 marks in his mind. Kill! Suddenly, the deputy captain Qingguang Supreme also had a murderous act. He displayed the supreme supernatural power that destroyed the heavens and the earth, and blasted towards the 8 parts. Tickling. Sun Heiyuan Supreme took the lead and walked in the forefront. More than 20 supreme masters, such as Jian Wushuang, followed closely, continuously performing the movement technique, jumping and flickering in the void. After about half a column of incense. Heiyuan Supreme stepped out of the sky, and sprinted forward. "There is a crack in the void ahead. Everyone be careful." He took a deep breath and looked up. At this glance, I couldn't help but feel cold. I saw that not far ahead, beside a crack like a vertical, it had turned into a Shura purgatory. Countless blood floats in the void, and there is a wave of divine power after the Supreme falls. A strange man with 3 snake heads is biting a Supreme in his mouth, chewing and biting. This Supreme has not died yet. His eyes are distantly looking into the distance. His eyes are full of despair. On the other side, the headless monster's big hand clutched Zeromu Supreme's head, as if raising a chick madly bombarded in the air. "Weak, weak, weak. You are too weak." The headless monster yanked his hands fiercely, tearing Zero Wood Supreme into two pieces, and throwing them aside like throwing a sack. Card. I haven't waited for Zero Wood Supreme's body to be reorganized and resurrected again. The headless monster has already strode away, lifting its huge feet and stepping on the Zero Wood Supreme's body. I dare! Heiyuan Supreme saw this and immediately fell into rage. Dead. He stomped his right foot and turned it into a shard of darkness that ran across the sun and the moon and went straight. With this knife, Daomong surpassed 100,000 miles and traversed Xinghe to sweep the sun and the moon. Ding! For a moment, this knife was severely split on the right leg of the headless monster that was about to step down. A half-month arc of dagger flashed, and with a tear, the entire right leg of this headless monster was cut off instantly. Roar! Suddenly, the headless monster roared in pain and stepped back a few steps. Zingma, you can't do this. Heiyuan Supreme reached out and raised Zero Wood Supreme, who had reorganized his body. Heiyuan, this guy is hard to deal with. Zero Wood Supreme gasped slightly. His expression solemnly said, Another one. The face on the headless monster's chest, his eyes twinkling, constantly looking at Heiyuan Supreme. Alas! I saw countless tentacles pouring out of the wound of his severed right leg, and then a flash of light flashed. These tentacles condensed into a huge right leg. Injury, instant recovery, as before. Let's go. The headless monster grunted coldly and turned to re-enter the void crack. Behind him, Babu will sneer and shake his head. Want to leave after killing someone? A cold voice sounded in the void. Soon afterwards, he saw a thin young man wearing a white robe walking out of the void and step by step cutting off the path of the headless monster. On the back of the white robe, the huge dazzling sixth team is embroidered with black thread. The sixth team captain, Brook Supreme, came. Behind him, more than 10 players walked out side by side. Jiuxing Shengzi joined the sixth team. He nodded toward the sword Wushuang. Shouted the leader of the line, Qi Jian Wushuang, slightly jawhead. Knowing that things are urgent at this moment, not a moment of chatting chills, he ordered a voice to let him live well. Oh! The face of the headless monster's chest twisted, and he glanced back at Xuanqi Supreme, then turned his head to look at Heiyuan Supreme. Instead of being afraid, he opened a radiant arc of excitement and whispered in a low voice, Interesting, really interesting. Next moment. He lifted his head sharply. Zhang angrily laughed. Babu generals, eat them. Boom. Countless energies condensed in the palms of his palms, and he saw that there was a huge mouth in his palms. Open this mouth, and the crimson light wave cannonballs condensed out instantly, blasting towards Heiyuan Supreme. Heiyuan Supreme slashed the huge knife in his hand and blasted a shell that smashed over, whispering coldly, Seventh team, kill. Yes, all members of the seventh team are roaring and using various magical powers to kill those 8. Hiss. Among the 8 generals, the monster who had 3 snake heads but had a human body suddenly spit out the letter strangely and smiled. There is food coming to the door again. He narrowed his eyes. His face was full of greed. His turquoise pupils twisted. His eyes continued to glance across the faces. Finally, his eyes fell on Jian Wushuang. Interesting. So small and weak, dare to come to trouble us? Huh. He stomped his right foot and suddenly turned into a ghost, rushing towards the sword, unparalleled. Chapter 44-49. The first is more. Huh. It was just a lapse of time. The 3 snake-headed monsters had already appeared in front of Jian was double-sided, open enough to swallow the mouth of Sun Moon Snake, and bite hard at Jian Wushuang. There are countless stench winds blowing at you. 4 marks? Top extreme? Wu Jian's expression was dignified, and Tai Luo's Excalibur appeared in his hands. The strength of these fictitious men is far beyond the corresponding realm. Don't look at these three snake-headed monsters are just top-level supreme, but they are far more terrible than ordinary top-level supreme. Even if it is Jian Wushuang, I dare not take it lightly. Cut! Just when Jian Wushuang lifted the Tai Luo Excalibur and was ready to fight with the three snakehead monsters, Rongzuan Supreme had already taken a step ahead, swiping his right foot fiercely, and will be facing the three snakeheads bitten by Jian Wushuang. Fly together! Sword unparalleled. You are weak, not his opponent. Give him to me. Sun Rongji glanced at Jian Wushuang, and then stared at the snake-headed weird with countless dignity. It is good. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head without evading politeness. At this moment, it is extremely critical, not the time for him to fail. Hiss, are you in a hurry to come to death? The three snake-head monsters' mouth opened a playful smile, looking at Rongzhen Supreme. The cruel light in his eyes continued to spit. Tong Rongzhen is obviously higher than him, but he is not half afraid, but instead has the light of greed in his eyes. Whiteness, that kid is over to you. The three-headed snake said to the young man with a pale face and black eyeshadows under his eyes. This person is the weakest one among the 8 books, and the one with the most human-like appearance. It is good. Baidu heard his words and tilted his head, and the whole person revealed his numbness and stiffness. Alas! Countless black light waves condensed in his hands and turned into a thin sword. Next moment, 2 imaginary forces exploded at the foot of Baidu, and he rushed out instantly like a white lightning, fiercely chopped to the sword, unparalleled. Can you still use it like this? Wu Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and the Tai Luo Excalibur was cut off instantly. Wu Tai Luo's Excalibur collided with the sword made by Su Li, and suddenly the sword with Su Li shattered. Nianjian Wushuang's neck twisted, and his right fist was slammed out just like pushing a round of the sun. Numerous bright golden lights condensed on Jian Wushuang's right fist and banged heavily on Baidu's cheek. Boom! Instantly, the whiteness was hit by a smashing hammer, and the body flew upside down. The whole head was directly blasted by this fist. Sure, but that's it. The sword has no double-sided and expressionless. This whiteness is 2 marks, which corresponds to the medium supreme strength, even if his strength is far superior to the medium supreme to improve a grade, but only the high supreme. High supreme has long been no longer in the eyes of Jian Wushuang. Is it? Countless thick tentacles poured from Baidu's neck, and in a short time, he recovered as before. Oh, the speed of recovery is much faster than us. A slight surprise flashed in Wu Jianhua's eyes, and then an interested look appeared on his face. Come on, let me see. How powerful are your vagrants? Do not let me down. The sword Wushuang rose to the sky. A majestic sword pressure, centered on the sword, spread instantly. The battle between the 2 parties and horses has fallen into the most intense state from the beginning. Heiyuan Supreme and 11 Supreme shot at the same time, strangling headless monsters back and forth. The 2 invincible extremes join forces. It's not as simple as 1 + 1. Either of them has the terrifying power to level the universe and destroy one side. At the moment when the 2 of them join forces, the entire starry sky is exploded, as if to reshape the universe and open up a chaotic world. ICA and T use any words to describe the power of both shots. In their hands, the sun and the moon are just of mud, and that are free to play between their fingers and the Milky Way across the sky, but the stream flowing under their feet. They can raise their hands and throw their feet at will, and can directly overturn the entire universe and blast its supernatural power. A little bit of mighty power is enough to squash countless stars. Although this headless monster is strong, It can even be said that he has repressive strength in the face of any of these two people, but in the joint effort of the two, he was suddenly beaten back and can only keep roaring. On the battlefield, horrible magical powers exploded, and sword blades tore through the sky. If someone in the depths of the universe saw this scene at this time, they would be exclaimed that this is a battle for extinction. With the joining of the 6th and 7th teams, the 8 generals that had been devastated and destroyed were immediately contained, and the situation reversed. Among them, in addition to the headless monster, the one with the highest build is the monster with a fat body and a mouth split to the ears. The teeth in his mouth were uneven and long, but he opened his mouth and bit a bite, but he directly crushed a supreme soldier who pierced him. Ha ha ha! Explode! A horrifying purple light wave spewed out of his mouth like a thunderbolt, and the 5 supremes who besieged him were all driven away. These 8 books are really too powerful. Although each of them is faced with enemies that are several times their own and is suppressed by death, they have not really fallen to the stage of life and death crisis, and they can even counterattack. I can say that if any of these 8 books are placed in the depths of the universe, they will be the masters of the hegemony. Cut star, a blue sword mang, nearly 10,000 square meters thick, condense in the sword without hands. The sword has no double sides and no expression, and it is easy to split. The entire sky was ripped apart by the mighty boom. Instantly the dummy, named Baidu, was severely split again. How can it be so strong? Tong Baidu's eyes shrank. This was the first time he had met. The opposite universe had a state under him, but he could crush him. His numb and stiff face was now full of fear. Boom! He picked up again, and countless virtual forces in his hand turned into a long sword. Under the flash of his body, he appeared on the top of Jian Wushuang's head and severely chopped off. Click! However, this sword was directly held by Wushuang's 5 fingers. Numerous violent virtual forces exploded between the 5 fingers of the sword pair, but they were unable to shake the sword pair. I heard that you have a companion supernatural power called Virtual Explosion. If you do use it again, you have no chance. Wu Jianshou shook his head and shook his finger, and the endless majestic strength immediately condensed at his fingertips, and instantly flew this whiteness. He looked down at the man condescendingly, his eyes indifferent. Okay, well, I'll do as you wish. Baidu struggled to stand up from the ground, holding his hands in a fierce space in front of him, and yelled in a low voice, Virtual Explosion! Chapter 44:50. Second War. Boom. Suddenly, this starry sky stagnates suddenly. Immediately, 2 long marks on the left shoulder of Baidu burst into countless red lights. Immediately, a stream of energy overflowed from him, forming a red ball of light between his palms. Alas! Around this crimson ball of light, as if the void was being squeezed by the giant force, and began to frantically shatter. I am so strange to the extreme. A breath that is completely different from the divine power permeates, representing destruction. Dead. The next moment, Baidu looked up sharply, looking at Xiang Wushuang, pushing his hands forward. Roar! In an instant, this crimson ball of light, like a bomb that destroyed the world, jumped across countless spaces and slammed straight towards the sword, unparalleled. The power of this blow is more than hundreds of times the energy of this person before, even enough to threaten the half-step invincible supreme. Is this a virtual explosion? No wonder in the same realm, virtual scholars are much stronger than our monks. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, staring at the horrible red ball approaching him quickly, and his interest became strong. Immediately, Jian Wushuang did a move that was enough to make the audience crazy. He slowly reached out his hand and grabbed at this scary red ball. Warrior Supreme. The Rongji Supreme, who was fighting fiercely in the distance, noticed this scene and suddenly changed his face, yelling, "Wu Shuang Supreme, quickly escape." The other 8 books will notice this scene. Firstly, it seems to be a little surprised that the whiteness is used to deal with a rude elementary supreme, and it is forced to use a virtual explosion, and then a sneer will appear on his face. Yan Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes as if he was oblivious and continued to reach for the scary red ball. It was almost within a short time before Jian Wushuang's right hand touched this scary red ball. Boom! A violent and distorted power burst into the sword without hands. The outstretched arm of Wu Jianwushuang burst directly. Is this the power of imagination? Jianwen's eyes shined out, feeling the power inside that terrible red ball. That is a very different power from the supreme divine power. On this horror ball, the entire arm of Jian Wushuang was smashed, and when it was about to be on the sword Wushan body, the 2 sides of the sword said, "Town!" In an instant, Chaos Overlord was urged to the limit by Jian Wushuang, and the surface of the whole Buddha's skin spewed a godlike pattern like a twisted tree root. At the position of his eyebrow, the purple word, Chuan, also instantly became demon dazzled. Countless sword chi burst out on Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, the original terrible horror ball was destroyed, and it broke instantly. Numerous magical powers evolved on the arm that Jian Wushuang blew up and turned into his arm again. Wu Jianshou looked at Baidu indifferently and said, "This associated supernatural power is really strong, but unfortunately you are too weak." After speaking, Tai Luo Di Jian reunited in the sword without hands. Wu Jin Wushuang is full of sharp breath like the magic sword with the same sheath. He could feel that the Taro Excalibur in his hand could not help but be ready to bleed. Well, let's go to death. The sword has no hands in the tailored Excalibur, splitting towards that whiteness. No, how could I die in the hands of your lowly humble universe monks? The whiteness screamed, but turned and rushed towards the void crack. Want to escape? Wu Jianshou sneered. Talented, amazing life. Boom. Instantly, a coercion from the highest level of life came to the audience. Under this coercion, the entire starry sky is stagnant, and space and time seem to freeze at this moment. The sound that Baidu was running away stopped in an instant. He turned his head and stared at Xiang Wushuang, as if he had found something that shocked him. His eyes enlarged sharply, and he lost his voice. Your body, how could there be a breath of his life? The breath of his? He Jianshuang heard the words and couldn't help a frown, and the Tai Luo Excalibur, which had been split off, was taken back by him. He stepped in front of Baidu, looked down at him coldly, and asked, "Who is the he you said? You don't know him?" Baidu heard a word. "Seems to be accidental sword Wushuang. I do not know who he said this person," then laughed, Ha. There is his breath in your body, humble and poor guy. You are dead. They will come to you. What are you talking about? Wu Jianshuang frowned. He could feel that the person in front of him did not open the river in the mouth. This person must know something. You want to know? At this moment, Baidu no longer had the fear of death, but there was a strangeness in his eyes. Humble and poor guy, you have a relationship with he, and you will die. No matter where you flee, those lunatics will find you, and you will surely die. The voice dropped. Baidu's body exploded. At this moment, he even chose to blow himself up. The horrible might exploded, setting off a monstrous white wave. The sword Wushuang receding back, waved his hands again, and waved the shock wave formed by the whiteness self-explosion. What is this guy talking about? Wu Jian Wushuang stood with his sword. His face was cloudy for a while. Shi Baidu's words before his death were like curses echoing in his mind. Who is he? Who are those lunatics who are going to kill me? The meaning of Ji Jianwis eyes, blinking quickly. He was not a stupid person, and soon realized that Baidu would suddenly say so after he released his talents and shocked his life. And Jian Wushuang was very keenly aware of it. The first sentence this person said revealed the word breath of life. A breath of life. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself. It can be said that his special life was all created by his master Xian, by his own power. So this person just said he's master? Then the lunatic in his mouth, was he the one who hunted down master in Joey Starfield? In the faint ambiguity, Jian Wushuang seems to feel that in the endless darkness there is an invisible line, which is controlling everything. The master of this line is his master Xuani. He can now be 100% certain that his mysterious master is absolutely inextricably related to the virtual universe. Even Jian Wushuang felt more and more that every step that his master took was meant. He began to wonder if it was his first meeting with Xuani, which seemed to be an unintentional coincidence, but in fact it was already a planned plan. In addition, Jian Wushuang has another problem that he is most concerned about. Then, if his master is really in the next big game, what role will he play in this big game? Nothing. Now, the most important thing is to improve our strength. After she took a deep breath, Jian Wushuang no longer thought about it, but turned his eyes and looked toward the battlefield. With Jian Wushuang ending the battle, other people's battles also came to an end. Chapter 44:51. Third more. On the battlefield, the 8 generals headed by a headless monster, under the pressure of the 6th and 7th teams, can only retreat steadily. The headless monster tried to escape several times, but was stopped by Supreme Heiyuan and Supreme Shi, one after another tearing the heavens and the earth through the sky, crossing the sun and the moon, suppressing all directions. Under the cooperation of Heiyuan Supreme and Sisi Supreme, the headless monster was gradually forced to the corner and had no choice. The waist of Baidu was actually killed. The headless monster noticed the scene where Jian Wushuang beheaded Baidu, and a loud humming sound came out of his nose. Then he looked at the 3-headed snake and said in a low voice, "Willow, before we retreat, you kill the guy with the sword." He was facing 3 snakes of the top siege of the 2 vice team-level top sieges. He nodded and heard the words. The 3 snake heads opened their mouths at the same time. Immediately, he swept away and rushed to sword unparalleled. "Hiss, you can even kill Baidu. It seems that I look down on you." The turquoise pupil in the eyes of the 3-headed snake twisted, and a strange laugh was made in his mouth. Wu Jianwushuang looked up at the man, his face slumped. On this person's left shoulder, 4 long scars are like scars of 3, reflecting the scarlet light. The strength of this 3-headed snake is far more powerful than that of whiteness. He was even stared at by the 3-headed snake, and he had a sense of horror that he had become a prey. The cold hair of the sword unparalleled body was all upright. Each hue. Huh! The 3-headed snake turned his head and disappeared instantly. When it appeared again, he had already appeared above Jian Wushuang. The huge snake's mouth opened, and he bit it down. "It's fast!" Wu Jian's face changed slightly, and Tai Luo's Excalibur split instantly. A sword-like horror, making a terrifying howling sound, instantly split into the giant mouth bit by the 3-headed snake. Huh! It was like a bomb exploded in the mouth of a 3-headed snake. However, the 3-headed snake was chopped by the swordman, but there was no pain at all. Instead, he bit a bite and swallowed the swordman directly in the belly. "No wonder you can cut and kill Baidu. Your sword is powerful and has reached the level of 3 marks." The 3-headed snake whispered a low laugh, and then Feng Feng said, "If I'm not mistaken, you must be a Tianjiao character in this universe. Jian Wushuang heard nothing and said nothing, but the body full of supreme divine power, ready to go. "Oh, you're so boring." When the three-headed snake saw Jian Wushuang ignored him, he couldn't help but churn his lips, and immediately the dark green pupils contracted into a line. Instantly, an endless virtual force burst out from him. "Well, let me eat you." Boom! The virtual force on the three-headed snake exploded again. Under the sweep of its body, it opened a mouth that was enough to swallow the sun, the moon, and the stars, and bite away fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. Taro Sword Code, Second Style, Dawn. Jian Wushuang's voice chilled and turned directly into a golden light, quickly splitting towards the three-headed snake. With this sword, Feng Rue reached the extreme point, enough to cut off the galaxy and split Zhoushan. Boom! The two severely hit each other, and the power of the Tai Luo divine sword exploded directly. Instantly, the snake head in the middle of the three-headed snake, from the mouth of the snake to the end of the snake, was flashed by a golden thread and cut in half. This time, the three-headed snake couldn't hold it anymore and gave a painful growl. The figure of the unparalleled sword is condensed behind the three-headed snake. This sword splits the three-headed snake into two halves, but he is not proud of it, but his face is more dignified. Taro Sword Code, Third Style, Dusk. Boom! Instantly, Duan Jianzhao was urged by Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang as the center, a huge pit appeared at the foot of Jian Wushuang, and then spread and spread. There was a huge suction coming out from the center of the pit, and it was only a moment that he pulled the three-headed snake into it. Buried, the 5 fingers spread out by Wu Jian's unparalleled grip. Suddenly, a force of squeezing from the sky suddenly burst out from the pit. The force of squeezing and colliding was so magnificent that it was enough to crush a top-level supreme into a meat sauce instantly. At this moment, the three-headed snake that was still roaring suddenly had a look of fear on his face. Stuck in this pit, he was like an earthworm trapped in a huge stone mill. His body was crushed thousands of times in an instant. In the distance, the headless monster, who had been driven to an end, noticed this scene, and his face suddenly became ugly. For the first time, he looked at Jian Wushuang. His eyes searched. Heiyuan Supreme and Cici Supreme also saw the pictures of Jian Wushuang suppressing the three-headed snake, and there was a flash of color in his eyes. "Heiyuan, it seems you have a monster under your hand." Sushi Supreme smiled, slightly. Under the cooperation of the two, the headless monster has come out, but now it is only the end of a strong crossbow, so he also rarely relaxes a bit. You CA and T talk about evil spirits, but your talent is better than others, and you still need to experience it. Heiyuan Supreme has no emotional changes on his face, but in his heart he is also surprised by Jian Wushuang's combat power. "Is it?" Su Shishuan looked at Heiyuan Supreme with a smile, and then said, "Heiyuan, why not transfer him to my 6th team? Get out of here." Heiyuan glanced at him without hesitation, and then snorted, "Don't say this. First kill this headless monster." Lucy Supreme nodded his head and looked again at the headless monster with a coldness on his face. A 6-mark monster. Even if he guards thousands of chaos ages in this extraterrestrial battlefield, has only seen it a few times. This is a big fish. You must not let it go. Supernatural power, Sanqing in 1 gas. Huh. For a moment, the 3 figures exactly the same as those of the Supreme Master Xuanxi came out of his body. The other side, virtual explosion. 3-headed snake, delirium, feeling the force of terror squeezing in the pit at dusk, no longer hesitating, arrogantly used the associated supernatural power, virtual explosion. Suddenly, the skulls on the left and right sides of the 3-headed snake, delirium, exploded directly. After the 2 snake heads exploded, they turned into pure virtual energy and rushed towards the middle skull. Roar! The 3-headed snake, delirium, opened his mouth, and a thick wave of light from the bucket was instantly roared by him. This horrible wave of light is so powerful that it only pierced the pit of dusk at once and pulled out a long dark trace in the void. This horrible wave of light, after piercing the pit of the dusk, blasted towards Jian Wushuang again. Come. Wu Jianshou took a deep breath and clenched the tailored Excalibur in his hand. The war in his eyes turned into a spark, flashing to the extreme. Break me! Wu Jianshou roared, and his power was tens of thousands of times more powerful than the ordinary supreme power, all in his hands. Choose. Suddenly, Taro's sword turned into a world that cut the sky, cut the sun, the moon, the stars, and the terrible sword rainbow that runs through the sky. And the sky, beneath a sword, the tailored sword trembled wildly, making a sound like the Buddha groaned, and the demon wept. Boom! Suddenly, the sword was chopped on the false burst of delusive light. Chapter 44:52. Fourth more. Boom! Instantaneously, two huge shock waves spread rapidly in the center of the two men's fighting. The whole void bursts instantly. Even the other Supremes who met in the distance were smashed by those who were hit by this shock wave, and they retreated back. For a moment, Tai Luo's magic sword turned into a dragon sword rainbow, stalemate with the strange light wave, regardless of up and down. Roar! Delirious Willow opened his mouth and yelled again, and saw the strange light wave in his mouth. And it turned out that the power had skyrocketed again, from the thick of the bucket to the thickness that required two people to embrace. Instantly, Jian Wushuang was severely rushed to fly, and the white robe representing the seventh team burst directly. Shusher is really strong. Wu Jian Wushuang stepped back all the way, stepped on the void with his legs, and crossed two long marks. He couldn't help breathing a little. This delusion is a four-marked false soldier, which means that it corresponds to the top supreme in the universe, but it can be said to be powerful, and it is even more terrifying than the half-step invincible supreme muting who has passed the enemy. The pit was broken inch by inch at dusk, and Willow stepped out step by step, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Best and weakest trash, bug. You have angered me completely. Delirious Willow finished speaking, and suddenly there was a surge of madness on his face, and he wanted to violently slash Swordsman. However, just then, in the distance, there was a roaring roar of a headless monster. I saw Heiyuan Supreme standing on the sky, and an invincible supreme power broke out and said coldly, "Supernatural power, black prison half-moon cut." Boom! In a split second, the huge black knife in his hand rose in the wind, and in a short period of time, it skyrocketed to a full length, turned into a thunder-black dragon with open teeth and claws, opened his teeth, and split directly on the left shoulder of the headless monster. Tear it! This headless monster was torn open with a single knife, dropping countless blood. And Supreme followed closely behind. The movement is not slow at all. Also use the killer. Supernatural powers, 5 spirits. Boom! Instantaneous visions, countless meteors condensed out of thin air, and then fell like rain. The two killed together. After a round of blows, the headless monster suddenly exploded and turned into countless pieces of minced meat. I have to say that the virtual monks from this virtual universe are powerful if they are ordinary monks. Even if they are invincible supremes, they will face 2 rounds of devastating blows from Supreme Heiyuan and Supreme Streams. I saw that the tentacles were breeding wildly on the numerous pieces of minced meat floating in the void. After a short breath, these tentacles came together and turned into a headless monster. Puffing his breath was weakened a lot, and the face on the chest was staring at Heiyuan Supreme and Zioxy Supreme. Ha! He. He gave a low, weird grin in his mouth and immediately said, "You can't kill me." Is it? Heiyuan Supreme and Zheshi Supreme are expressionless. walking towards the headless monster step by step. There was a mocking smile on the corner of the mouthless monster. Immediately, an extremely powerful coercion emanated from the headless monster. This coercion does not belong to him. At the moment when this coercion is released, the looks of Heiyuan Supreme and Cece Supreme are all changed. This coercive force is far above them. This coercion, they are very familiar. At the same time, when the headless monster closed his eyes, his face became devout and whispered, "Great God, I am your people God." The magical groaning whispered from his mouth. The three-headed snake delirium that was originally crumbling and killed towards Jian Wushuang, after giving up on Jian Wushuang unwillingly, gave up the pursuit of Jian Wushuang, stopped his pace, and began to silently groan like a headless giant recite, "Great God, in your people, Willow." At the same time, Yabu will be among the others, the spherical monster with a mouth cracked to the jaw, and a horned warrior with thick fangs. 28 generals began to recite this magic spell. Suddenly, a terrifying breath came from them. In this breath, whether it is invincible supremacy such as Heiyuan and Xuanxi, or sword unparalleled, it is like falling in an ice cellar. A big terror between life and death is enough to suffocate. Huh, huh. There was a dull sound from the crack in the void. Howling. Immediately after that, a squeak of iron chains across the floor sounded. What happened? Sui Jian Wushuang suddenly felt an extremely strong palpitation coming from the Buddhist instinct, and wanted him to flee this place immediately. As if an indescribable terror exists, it is coming to the world soon. Huh! The muffled sound grew louder and louder, as if Lei Gong was angry and slammed the smashing hammer in his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the void crack exploded. I was bound by countless chains, and the extremely dark arm was so large that it burst out from the void crack. Can't use any voice to describe this dark arm, which is so big that it completely subverts the sword's unparalleled imagination. Light is a fingernail, which is dozens of times of the sun. With the palm of your hand, you can cover several star fields. There was a vast, evil, ancient atmosphere, and it erupted, turning into a cloud of smoke. Guang is an arm that is so huge, it is hard to imagine how big the master of this arm will be. This is... Suddenly, Heiyuan Supreme and Xuanxi Supreme were horrified, and a horror surged in their eyes. Qi Jian Wushuang almost fell directly from the air, and the whole person was like a falling ice cellar with cold liver and gallbladder. This is definitely one of the most terrifying beings he has ever encountered. This is the arm that had dealt with Master Zeus. In the distance, the 8th captain, Zerowood Supreme, who was recovering quickly, was directly interrupted, shocked, and lost his voice. Boom! The next moment, the arm was raised high, and it was photographed fiercely towards Jian Wushuang and others. Escape! He did not hesitate at all, whether it was Heiyuan Supreme or others or Jian Wushuang. All the divine power in the body erupted in an instant, turned into countless rays of light, and blasted away in all directions. However, some people's response was slow. Huh! 2 high-ranking Supreme, only then erected light and grabbed. That palm has been photographed fiercely. Millions of empties, shattered at the same time. Hundreds of thousands of mushroom clouds rose from his fingers. Do not! The 2 Supreme Masters, who had only had the time to utter a roar of anger, were directly photographed as a fan powder, and they were destroyed. Boom! Immediately, the arm was raised again, and the 5 fingers as thick as the Milky Way took a hard shot toward the front. With this palm, this time directly wrapped the sword Wushuang, etc. in it. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's face turned wild. Chapter 44-53. 5th more, at the same time, located in the base camp and main hall of the extraterritorial battlefield. Wu Zhou Shengao sat on the main seat, closed his eyes, and meditated. Tong Lansu and Lan Lan disciples stood beside him, silent. Suddenly, the statue of Zhou felt something, and opened his eyes suddenly. Su Shun was born. He raised his head, staring at the cracks in the void. His eyes stared directly through the starry sky, and he saw the huge black arm. Hearing this, Lan Su and Lan Lan, two disciples standing on his sides, suddenly felt a horror on his face. Xian Su Shun, but those who have dealt with Master. Xiao Su, Xiao Lan, keep your base camp. Wu Zishan's face was heavy, only to see his shoulder tremble slightly. Then he disappeared into the main hall. After the god of the gods left, Lan Su and Lan Lan couldn't help looking at each other, and their hearts began to sink. Extraterrestrial battlefield. Rumble. The entire starry sky has been blown up. Headless monsters and His Majesty's 8-part will stand in place, watching this scene steadily, with sparks of excitement in their eyes. The second palm photographed by that black arm is already coming. Instantaneously, the tidal wave is surging and countless chi machines are shaking. The world seems to be in the end, and it will be destroyed once. I was swiftly firing the sword Wu Shuang, who fled. I only felt that the eyes were black, and when I looked up, I saw that the wide palm had covered the sky and replaced the vast sky. Do not! Instantly, Jian Wushuang was about to crack, an unprecedented crisis of life and death, constantly exploding in his body. Like an alarm bell, let him leave quickly. Huh! Taro sword appeared in the sword without hands in an instant. At this moment, Jian Wushuang has no reservations anymore, and all the divine power on his body bursts out. Huh! Instantly, the sword Wushuang directly split into thousands of swords in white, resisting this palm. However, it is useless. Everything is useless. This way of destruction is enough to cut off the mighty swordsmanship of the universe, and falling on this palm is like being bitten by a mosquito, which can't hinder the slightest. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang did not intend to stop the sword, but took advantage of the impact of this sword to split, and quickly retreated, leaving the attack area of this palm. Taro sword code, 5th style Taro. Under the pressure of this crisis of life and death, Jian Wushuang has been completely insane and utterly used the best of the best in the bottom of the box. Boom! Suddenly, behind the sword Wushuang, there appeared to be the supreme faith of Tai Luo Supreme. This law is as big as a star, but in front of the arm, it is as small as a finger, extremely small. Cut! Qi Jian Wushuang exhausted his whole body energy. Suddenly, he was holding the Tai Luo divine sword, and he slashed down with a sword. His back was also in the same shape, making the same action as the sword unparalleled. The majestic sword surged up into the sky. This defeated half-step invincible supreme ice sword's Tai Luo sword was just a blink of an eye, and it was severely chopped on the palm of an inch of pressure. Buzz! Wu Tailuo's sword exploded directly on the dark palm, forming a star-shaped mushroom cloud. However, this palm still stood still and fell quickly. Qi Jian's unparalleled vision turned into a darkness, and the whole world was filled with this palm. Fortunately, the air waves that Taro's sword exploded directly formed a terrifying shock wave and spreading Jian Wushuang, which was already extremely fast, to the front again. Boom! Finally, this palm fell down. At this critical moment, Jian Wushuang arrogantly used all the mysteries that can be improved in a short time, bringing the speed to an extreme and rising to a level again. It was embarrassing. At the moment when the palm fell, Jian Wushuang burst into a roar, and a roll rolled away from the palm. The fingertips of the arm fell from the place where the sword was unparalleled, but at a distance of 100 feet. The Jiao Xing Shengzi is also included in this palm, and there are no more than one position behind the sword. He is out of luck. The desperate roar came to an abrupt halt, and he was photographed as a fan. allied. At the last moment of his death, his eyes turned to Jian Wushuang. His eyes were full of fear and thirst, as if he wanted Jian Wushuang to save him. 9 stars. Jian Sword Wushuang was smashing instantly. Jiu Xing Shengzi is the core member of the Sword Alliance and one of the highest followers in the ancient sky. However, he hasn't waited for Jian Wushuang to take any action. With the torrential weather falling from that palm, a shock wave has formed, sending him to fly fiercely. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang was like a broken sack. He crossed a long parabola in the air and fell into the distance. Qi Jian Wushuang struggled to stand up from the ground, and the blood couldn't be restrained, and he spit out of his mouth. Qi Jian Wushuang looked at the drop of that palm, his face gloomy to the extreme. Ka-rup. Suddenly, that palm has been raised again. Under the palm of his hand, nearly 10 supreme people have turned into dust and fell completely. This palm, like a devil, slowly lifted up, and the dark and strong magic air between the 5 fingers entangled. The 3rd palm is coming. Hold this palm and completely cover everyone. Wu Heiyuan Supreme and others looked at this palm and could not help but feel scalp tingling. More people feel ashamed and give up resistance completely. Wu Jianshuang's face was somber that he could drip water, and that Tai Luo sword had completely drained all the divine power from him. Now, let alone escape from the attack range of this palm, even if it is now possible to give another sword, it is not easy. In the distance, headless monsters and 8 generals, looking at this scene, a grim and cruel smile suddenly appeared on his face. Great Lord, end this life of garbage. Boom. The path was bound by a black iron chain, and the skin was dark and dry, like a corpse's huge arm, raised again, and took a 3rd palm. Everyone gave up, in addition to Sword Wushuang. No, I won't die here. Never. Jian Wushuang's teeth clattered. There was a sense of insanity in his eyes. He saw his right hand flip, and Wu Xing Chao Ding Ding appeared in his hand. Hit him. It's time to detonate Wu Ding Chao Ding. He wants to directly control Wu Xing's Chaos Ding, to explode, to stop this hand. All this is too crazy, too shocking. No one can imagine what effect the self-detonation of an extreme ancestor will have. His Wu Jianshou took a deep breath and looked at the trembling Wu Ding Chao Ding in his hands. His eyes flashed intolerable first, but after a short while, this one can't bear it, and it has been replaced by madness and determination. Rumble! This palm is getting closer and closer. I cover the sky, and the sun is magnificent. The huge wind blowing Jian Wushuang's black hair flying, and the pressure from the giant palm that has not fallen has caused Jian Keishuang's chaotic domineering body to crack open fiercely, and there is a spider web crack. It's time. Jian Wushuang is about to detonate the Wu Ding Chao Ding. Presumptuous. As the king of chaos speaks, an old voice, as if through the floods of the universe, experienced the ancient yellow and exploded in the starry sky. Chapter 44:54. The first is more. After this sound blew, all the people raised their heads instantly and heard the sound. I saw one approaching to the extreme, using the white horses captured by both eyes to pass in front of them in an instant. Everyone just felt that a flower was in front of them, and this practice appeared above their heads. That is an old man with white hair, behind him blossoming lotus blossoms. Master Elder God, Master Zeus is here. We are saved. For a moment, there was a rush of ecstasy on everyone's face. That was the ecstasy of the rest of the life after the disaster. Wu Jian's pupils shrank, and he would prepare for the self-destructive Wu Ding Chao Ding, and withdrew it from the ring. Buzz, buzz. After I saw the god of Era, There was a burst of violent sounds in the void crack. Su Shun, you are over the line. Wu Zhou God was expressionless, stretched out his fingers, and pointed toward the palm that destroyed the heavens and the earth. This finger is very common. Even if Jian Wushuang's luck was concentrated in his eyes, he didn't see anything special about this finger. However, it is this finger that gently touches the palm of the black palm, but it is the giant palm that is crushed all the way, and it can no longer be in the slightest. A cold voice sounded from the mouth of Zhou God. Next moment, boom! Instantly, countless bright brilliance burst out, and the avenue directly evolved into substance, turning into a rolling fairy wheel. At this fingertip position, there are 6 reincarnations rising: fairy birds, flying cranes, hovering, true dragon, and phoenix arrogant. Suddenly, endless Xianhui fell. Countless stars flew around. The avenues sometimes turned into a huge yin and yang gossip, and sometimes turned into a flowing, billowing huangquan, as if the heavens and earth were condensed in this finger. Roar! A loud, snarling roar spread through the cracks in the void from the other side. Immediately afterwards, I saw that this palm was like an electric shock and began to retract at a very fast speed. Instantly, the 8 generals headed by a headless monster were directly exploded into countless pieces of flesh by the aftershock force of this finger. Holding the huge arm, he grabbed it fiercely and grabbed the 8 pieces of minced meat in his hand and crazily retracted into the void crack. Alas! After a few breaths, the pile of minced meat condensed together and turned into a headless monster and 8 generals. Damn! We will be back. Hiss, that guy with the sword. This time you are lucky. Next time you will not be so lucky. The headless monster and the 8 generals were exhausted to the extreme. But even so, their faces were not half afraid, but they looked provocatively at the of the earth. The 3 snakes' delirious willows looked cruelly toward Xiang Wushuang, pulling a sneer from the corner of his mouth. Howl! He was just dying, and the black arm, wrapped in a headless monster and 8 generals, retracted into the void crack. Everyone looked at each other, and in their hearts, they had the good fortune of the rest of their lives. But more, it was still a strong humiliation. Want to come? Just leave? I have always had a mild expression of the universe. This time there is no trace of expression on his face, cold like a piece of ice. I saw his body flicker, and the whole person disappeared again, but he just stepped into the void crack. Master Elder God. Instantly, countless people's hearts tightened. No one expected that the of the universe would rush into the void crack. Don't worry, since the Lord God of God dared to face the universe, he will certainly come back. Hai Yuan's supreme glance glanced at the crowd, and he said with a deep voice. Sushi Supreme also took a deep breath and said slowly, the owner of that arm just now is the strongest of the virtual universe. Since he dared to cross the line to slaughter us, the Lord God can naturally kill them in the past. Everyone be calm and calm. Just wait quietly. Everyone heard the words, looked at each other, and nodded and stopped talking. To tell the truth, the battle with the 8 generals was almost overwhelming. However, the emergence of that huge arm was an instant reversal of the situation and massacre. It was like a fight between 2 children, but the adults suddenly stepped in. In the hearts of all the people, all those who surged were trembling, a layer of haze. Fortunately, the of the universe came. Howling. Huh. Inside the fissure of the void, there was a loud explosion. After dying for about half a column of incense, the of the universe rushed out of it. He held in his hands, carrying the headless monster and 8 generals. His face is slightly pale. The compatibility between the 2 universes is too large. The higher the revision, the stronger this compatibility, and the more he will be rejected by different universes. Even if he is NT able to stay in the virtual universe for too long, he can only withdraw. Master Elder God is back. Master God, are you okay? Everyone started talking and hurried forward. Old man is fine. The god of Shakespeare shook his head and immediately looked at the headless monster and Hachiman, who were sealed by mystics. In the hands of the gods, the headless monsters and 8 generals, which were extremely difficult to deal with before, are just as weak as a baby. Close. As soon as the Phoenix god's eyes were cold, he directly displayed the great magical power and squeezed these 8 parts and headless monsters into a bead-sized bead. You want to leave if you kill someone? Will my husband allow it? Wu Zhouxin shook his head, looked at Supreme Heiyuan and others, and said, the 6th team stays behind the void in the void, and the others go back with the old man. Everyone looked at the 8 generals and the headless monsters that were captured by the gods of Zhou. They felt that they were exhaling a sigh of anger, and they came to the extreme. Yes, so everyone should be rushing. Under the leadership of the universe, everyone turned into a streamer looting towards the base camp. Qi Jian Wushuang didn't have any expression on his face, but he felt like he was holding a heavy stone, which was extremely heavy. The brutality of the battlefield outside the territory was far beyond his imagination. You have to know that in the depths of the universe, Supreme can be a repressive party commanding the utmost power of several stars, and there is almost nothing that can threaten Supreme life. But in this extraterrestrial battlefield, the Supreme is almost like a mustard, and will fall down if he is not careful. In the war just now, the number of the 6th, 7th, and 8th teams has fallen to the extreme, far exceeding the number of hands. Snapped. Hold a big hand and put it on the shoulder of Jian Wushuang. Qi Jian Wushuang looked up. Heiyuan Supreme looked at him. Well, this is your first battle in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Take it easy. The extreme fall here is too sparse. But even me, maybe it will fall someday. Big hand patted on the shoulder. Wu Heiyuan Supreme smiled slightly, and then Feng Feng said, "You are doing well this time. Go back." Okay. Wu Jianshou took a deep breath, stepped on his feet, turned into a sword-like sword, and drove quickly to the base camp. Chapter 44:55. Second more. Alas, I walked around Changhong, sweeping through the vast sky. Along the way, everyone didn't speak and remained silent. This victory was won, but the victory was too tragic and too tragic. Ji Jian has no expression on both sides and is also silent, and the desperate look of Jiuxing Shengzi before his death is constantly replayed in his mind. He and Jiuxing Shengzi are not particularly familiar with each other, but it was only that time that the 6 major forces besieged the Temple of Life. Jiuxing Shengzi brought the disciples of Jiuxing Holy Land to support him, and he could remember it forever. Virtual God. Wu Jian murmured to himself, and then there was a flash of murder in his eyes. After a while, the base camp stationed outside the battlefield, outside the territory, arrived. In addition to the 6th team, who is now left to patrol the void fissures, the captain-level figures of the 8 teams are all members of His Majesty, standing at the gate of the base camp to welcome everyone. Obviously, they already knew the battle that broke out in the extraterritorial battlefield. This is also the first time that Jian Wushuang saw members of the 9 team. Everyone walked into the base camp step by step and nodded slightly to the 8 team members, saying hello. Wu Jian Wusu walked at the end, just as he was about to step into the base camp. His steps were a meal. It's him? Wu Jianshou frowned and looked towards the 2nd team. The captain of the 2nd team is the Taishu Emperor who once had a relationship with him in the Taishu Temple. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be the captain of the 2nd team in this extraterrestrial battlefield. Oh, this guy is here too? Emperor Taishu also saw Jian Wushuang and raised his brow slightly. Every once in a while, The god of chaos will send a group of supreme masters to the extraterritorial battlefield in the universe. If he hadn't seen Jian Wushuang today, he really didn't know that Jian Wushuang came to the extraterritorial battlefield. Beside Emperor Taishu, Emperor Bingyan had already recovered from his injuries and put on a white robe of the rank of vice captain. He also saw the sword unparalleled, and he was shocked. Jian Wushuang. This is Jian Wushuang. Immediately, he lowered his head and opened a hysterical smile on the corner of his mouth. Very good. Jian Wushuang, I didn't expect you to come to the extraterritorial battlefield. Ha ha ha. It is time for us to settle accounts. His chest was violently undulating, his mouth was laughing, but there was no sound. The sword of Wu Jian glanced over Binyu Supreme's face, and the corner of his mouth also pulled a sneer. I am very good. My enemies are in this extraterrestrial battlefield. The hatred between them has already reached the point of endlessness. Unless there is a fall between them, the hatred will continue. Snapped. Wu Jianwu stepped up and continued to move forward. Sword unparalleled. You are so fateful. The gods have survived. A harsh sound rang out in Jian Wushuang's ears alone. Qi Jian Wushuang turned his head and saw Long Qing, wearing the white robe of the third team vice captain, spreading his hands, and said with a joke. After waiting for Sword Wushuang to reply, Long Qing shook her head and smiled. But that's fine. It seems that God's will is ready to let you die in my hands. Is it? Wu Jianwushuang glanced at him, then ignored him and walked forward step by step. For a long time, these enemies will naturally be solved one by one. I walked into the main hall. The phantom god has been sitting high on the main seat, holding in his hands a headless monster and 8 beads that will be condensed. His gaze swept across the faces of everyone. Then he swung his right hand. A touch of warm brilliance immediately waved out from the god of Zhou and spilled on everyone. Suddenly, there were many injured people on the original. The injuries recovered quickly, and the exhausted divine power accelerated the recovery speed. Ill wait, Xiezhou God. Suddenly, everyone arched their hands. It doesn't matter. Wu Zhoushan nodded and said, This time you worked hard. Immediately, the right hand of God of the Emperor waved again, and the beads in his hand rose to the sky, freeing him from the palm of his hand. Hell! The next moment, the headless monsters and 8 generals rose in the wind and stood in the hall. Damn old thing! Kill! Suddenly, the headless monster and Babu screamed fiercely on their faces, and they shouted and killed. But now, what kind of waves do they find when the of the universe is here? Alas! I saw the expression of Zhou God indifferent, a bounce of his fingers, and suddenly Dao Xianhui shot from his hand, turning into a cage, trapping the headless monster and Babe. In the cage, the headless monster slammed a few times and found that it was impossible to shake the cage at all. Then he turned his head to look at the Zhou, put out his tongue, and licked his lips, smiling. God of God, you just keep us till now. Just want to know the news of Lord Shushan? Wu Zhou God heard nothing and said nothing. The headless monster shook his head and said, What about what I tell you? It won't be long before Master Shushan will unlock the seal and lead the army to level the universe. By then, not only will you die, everyone in the entire hall can't escape. The billions of souls in your entire universe will become our slaves. Ha 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 ha. With that said, the headless monster laughed loudly, and his face was full of madness. Look for death. Wu Zhou's face turned fierce, and he popped up with one finger, and the headless monster suddenly melted away from the body. In just a few breaths, it disappeared. Next, the of the universe shook his fingers, and Babu began to die one by one. In front of the universe, there is no difference whether it is the headless monster or the 8 generals, just like Jian Wushuang, and others face the dark arm. There is no resistance at all force. Huh, there was a muffled sound. And soon the 8 books were exhausted, leaving only the gloomy three-headed snake Delirium. Just as the of the universe was about to kill him, the three-headed snake, Delirious Lou, suddenly said, I can tell you about the false god, and even tell our universe to deploy to you, but I have a condition. The god of Wuzhou frowned and said lightly, What conditions? When he heard this, a cruel smile appeared on the corner of the mouth of the three-headed snake, Delirium, and the turquoise pupil turned. The next moment, his eyes fell on Jian Wushuang. I will fight this man, regardless of life or death. Each depends on his fate. As soon as he said this, the audience was shocked. Alas, everyone's eyes are on Xiang Jian Wushuang. Wu Zhoushan glanced at Jian Wushuang and immediately relooked at the three-headed snake Delusion, shook his head, and said, No, you have to change a condition. However, the three-headed snake Willow shrugged and shook his head. That's a shame. Come on, kill me. You won't be me? After hearing the cold snoring, the god of Chaozhou hurled around his fingertips and killed him. At this time, fight me? I should. Wu Jian stepped out step by step without expression. Chapter 44-56. Third more. This battle, I answer it. When the sword Wushuang stepped out, the audience was silent after saying this sentence. Everyone is. Master, absolutely must. Jian Wushuang is my universe's arrogance. If anything goes wrong, it will be a great loss to my universe. Heiyuan Supreme also flashed his eyes and said, This is not possible. Jian Wushuang is not the elementary supreme practice, and the three-headed snake has 4 mark-level virtual men. According to the realm swap, this is the top supreme, plus a false explosion is enough to compare to the invincible supreme. Everyone persuaded. At this moment, a seemingly strange sound sounded in the hall. What's so bad? Once we know the deployment of the Void Universe, we can deal with it in advance and even wait for the rabbits to wipe them out. This matter is very important. What's the matter for Jian Wushuang to go to the war? In my opinion, don't just say, let Jian Wushuang fight a battle. Even if Jian Wushuang took the initiative to die, it would be due to the universe. It's his duty. The speaker is not someone else. It is the Diwu Temple Supreme who joined the 6th team. Alas! Suddenly, many eyes fell on him. The deputy captain of the 7th team, Rongxing, sneered. You are so nice. Why don't you go to death? Also, what is your duty? As far as I know, Jian Wushuang has come to this point. It's all on his own, and who hasn't owed half of it? How can he say it? Suddenly, the supreme Nana from the Diwu temple opened his mouth and thought for a long time before sulking, this three-headed snake Willow is not me by name. When everyone heard the words, they couldn't help laughing, and when they wanted to say more, they saw the Zhou shook his head and said, Okay, be quiet. Then everyone shut up. Wu Zhoushan looked at Xiang Jian Wushuang, and Shun Sheng asked, Little guy, if you are against him, how sure are you to win? Wu Jianshuang heard the words and smiled, then stretched out his hand, grabbed into the void, determinedly 10%. It is good. After hearing the words, the god of God suddenly flashed in his eyes and nodded. The sword is unparalleled, and the old man will let you fight on behalf of our universe. Others still wanted to talk, but when they saw that the of the universe had already made a decision, Jian Wushuang also looked like a vow, so he nodded and stopped saying more. It was the delusion who heard the words, and the corners of his mouth widened, suddenly pulling out a cold smile. Oh, I seem to be underestimated. Alas! The bifurcated pointed tongue licked the corner of his mouth, and the pupils of the willow dark green burst up, showing a trace of cruelty. Well, my husband will arrange a battlefield for you. The god of the phantoms tears at will, and immediately tears a crack in the void, turning it into a kingdom of gods. There are everything in the sky, the mountains, the lakes, and the rivers. This ability to break new ground and create the world is truly amazing. Immediately, Zhou God took a photo with his right hand, grabbed Willow from the air, and threw it into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Thank God. Wu Jianwushuang arched his hand at him and then stepped into a streamer and also shot into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. On the great hall, the silhouettes of Jian Wushuang and Delirium disappeared. Instead, a landscape picture appeared. In the picture were the two swordsmen and Delirious in the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Look at it. Since Jian Wushuang said that he was 10% sure, he wouldn't be wrong. The of the universe faintly spoke. Everyone responded in congratulations, raised their heads, and looked diligently at this picture. God Kingdom Battlefield, Wu Jianwushuang, and Lulu stood on a large lake and stood with their hands. The two did not have more nonsense, and they started the fight directly. With his right foot stepped, Jian Wu overturned all the lakes, forming a giant wave surging, and the wave reached 100 feet high. Suddenly, in the tide, Jian Wushuang has already held the Taro Excalibur in his hand, turning it into a forest blue sword, and rushing out. Howl! The waves of Baizhang broke open instantly, and the figure of Jian Wushuang appeared above the head of Willow. Cut! The cold voice exploded. Qi Jian Wushuang directly spurred the divine power and fell down severely. Hiss! Delirious Willow spit out snakes, and the green pupils reflected the appearance of Jian Wushuang, a sword flying, and opened a red light wave. Instantly, this red light wave hit the tailored Excalibur that fell down and chopped off, and immediately sent out an extremely powerful shock wave. Instantaneously, the shock wave spread out and razed the square to the ground. The tens of millions of tons of water in the flooded lake are directly dried and evaporated, turning into water vapor, forming a monstrous white wave. Fortunately, this side of the kingdom of God was developed by the of the universe, and the space is extremely stable. Otherwise, if it is placed outside, it will be enough to smash the void and burst several planets. Boom! Both were retreats, and Willow was smashed into the ground hundreds of pieces, and a huge human-shaped pit appeared, while Jian Wushuang flew backwards, crashing into 3 mountain peaks in succession. Kankan stopped. This move was just a small tentative test of the two, so the two did not suffer any injuries. Breaking dawn. Yen Jianwushu leaned against the mountain wall, stepped on his right foot again, and his body radiated again, turning into a golden light and killing towards Willow. Virtual crack. Delirious Willow's 3 snake heads were glued together, raised his hands, and slammed his sword towards Wushuang. Suddenly, 2 halos appeared in his hands, which actually caught the breaking dawn golden light. Ding, 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 ding. Huge impulse, pushing Willow back hard and violently back. His feet marked 2 deep grooves on the ground in his hands. Countless sparks splashed. Go to hell. Delirious Lu Yen laughed. The 3 snakes' heads opened, and they bit the sword's head. Yes, it is you. Yen Jian's eyes were cold, and he directly urged Chaos Overlord, sweeping his right foot fiercely, sweeping like a 9-section whip, and hit the snake head under the biting Willow. The snake head of Delirious Willow suddenly swayed, and Jian Wushuang took the opportunity to yank out the Tai Luo Excalibur, and one sword flew Delirious Willow coldly. The 4th season of the Terra Sword Classics. Howl. Suddenly, the entire battlefield of the Kingdom of God was twisted, and the Taro sword disappeared. Click the whole world of the Kingdom of God, whether it be mountains, rivers or lakes. It freezes and freezes every inch of an inch. The temperature suddenly drops by dozens of degrees, and countless cold snow falls from the air. At a glance, the whole world was snow-capped, like a white hatta covered with ice, and fell into the world of glaciers. Okay, delirious Willow looked up at the sky and snow, and he couldn't help but stiffen. Alas! A gust of snow fell on his shoulder. Suddenly, the horrific ice-cold power directly passed through his body and instantly frozen his entire shoulder. Chapter 44:57. It is good. In the main hall of the base camp of the universe, everyone looked at the battle scenes coming from the screen and clapped their hands. No wonder there was news from the universe before, saying that Jian Wushuang is the first day of eternal arrogance and has the ability to fight beyond the ranks. This seat will still be doubtful before. Now, it seems that the rumors are half exaggerated. Oh, remember that this trick was created by Taro's guy that year? Seeing Jian Wushuang, he has already done Taro Supreme, true story. He will probably be better than Blue out of Blue, surpass Taro Supreme, and take it away, the name of the first Sword Emperor of all ages. Since Supreme, I haven't seen such a profound person in Kendo in the universe for a long time. I really miss it. After this sun, the future is limitless. In my opinion, I'm afraid it won't take long. The Taro Excalibur will be renamed and replaced by the Wushuang Excalibur. Everyone said with a smile. They were quite worried at the beginning, but at the moment when they saw Jian Wushuang, who could perfectly suppress the Willow, they felt relieved. Only Heiyuan is supreme, frowning slightly. I don't know why, there is always a bad feeling in his heart. God Kingdom Battlefield. Wu Jian's unparalleled footwork is empty, his black hair is flying, and he looks down at the icy Willow frozen in ice and snow, and speaks coldly, burning. Suddenly, the body of the three-headed snake, Delirium, directly exploded and shattered into numerous ice foam. The Jian Wushuang saw a slight sigh of relief, and he could feel that the jianshi mixed in the snow had completely crushed the Willow into dregs. Hiss! However, just then, howl! Numerous tentacles poured out, tangled fiercely, and turned into the appearance of a three-headed snake. His breath is not diminished, looking up at Jian Wushuang's eyes, full of irony. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and even if he had to say that the recovery ability of this virtual man was simply terror, and he could not help moving. Su took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang sneered. I see you can survive a few blows. 4 seasons, winter to spring. Boom. Suddenly, the snow disappeared, and all the spring thunder blew. The drizzle drizzled, rolling down like playing a robbery fairy song. Millions of raindrops are millions of swords. Slaughter. Fall. Jian Wushuang said coldly. In an instant, millions of sword chi turned into raindrops, rolling down at the same time. Every sword chi is the full blow of Jian Wushuang. Zheng Jin's move killed the Yuding Supreme, and the thousands of avatars of the Supreme. Rumble! Suddenly, the three-headed snake Willow just had to fire a few virtual bullets, and his body was again destroyed by millions of swords, and his body was broken. In the main hall, everyone looked at this scene again and again applauded. However, this time it was not only Heiyuan Supreme's brow that frowned, but even the of heaven flashed a light in his eyes. God Kingdom Battlefield. No, there is a problem. Wu Jianshou stopped moving, his brows tightened tightly together. If something goes wrong, there must be a demon. He played against the three-headed snake Willow in the extraterritorial battlefield. He knows the strength of Willow, and he is definitely not so weak. Until now, Willow had not performed the magical power burst at the bottom of the box. This guy must be thinking about it. Qi Jian has no two-way talents, but just in an instant, he wants to understand everything. Why would Lulu find him solo, and why he hasn't performed his tricks? This only proves one problem. That's the delusion that Lulu is carrying. Well, let me see, what are you doing? Wu Jianshou snorted coldly. A flash of color flashed in his eyes. 4 seasons, spring to summer. Rumble. Suddenly, the raindrops disappeared in the sky, a scorching sun, rising suddenly, hanging high for 9 days. Xia of the 4-season swordsmanship is the most violent and most terrifying move in the 4 seasons. Qi Jian Wushuang did not believe it, and Lu Lu dared to cope with ease as before. Go with. The next moment, Jian Wushuang waved his right hand heavily, and this round of fiercely hot sun, he immediately crushed towards the willow. Rumble! The entire battlefield of the kingdom of God shook madly. The earth began to dry and split, and dozens of gully marks appeared in the sky. The sky is falling apart. This time, the willow has finally changed color. The pupil in his eyes contracted violently, and a dip in his face surged and said, "Void explode!" Suddenly, the left and right heads of willow were blown away severely. Thousands of energy were accumulated in his mouth, and a terrifying light wave was born. Roar! The next moment, this light wave radiated out and collided with the big sun that fell heavily. Let's sizzle. The void is twisted for a while. Even if you see the extremely stable space of the kingdom battlefield opened by the god of Zhou himself is beginning to be full of dense cracks like spider webs. Countless devastating energies exploded from the impact of the two, slamming the quartet madly, completely leveling the mountains and rivers of this Fang's Hen's country to the ground. Like chaos. In the main hall, many of the Supremes watching this scene were all shocked on their faces. The power of the two men's fight has reached half-step Invincible Supreme. No, the average half-step Invincible Supreme cannot cause such a powerful power. It can be said that the two are infinitely close to the Invincible Supreme. Swords matchless, worthy of the name of the first day of the universe. For many years, ever since the 100,000 Chaodong prehistoric kingdoms died in the hands of Su Shi, I have never seen such a villain. I wait for the universe to be so proud that it is the blessing of our entire universe. Everyone's eyes are astonished. Even the god of Eo, who occupies the main seat, flashes a glory in his eyes. Xuani, you have a good apprentice. There was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. What? Delirious Willow growled wildly, and the horrible light waves in his mouth continued to grow stout, and the power increased even more. Talents, primitive universe, dragon blood secrets. Jian Wushuang is also eager to crack. He is urged by various mysteries and turbulent powers, and his firepower is full. Next moment, boom! 2 energies finally exploded, and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The whole world of the kingdom of God, trembling madly, as if to be destroyed the next moment. Suddenly at this moment, the 3-headed snake, Lulu, suddenly burst out into a crazy laugh. This is the time. His body burst into pieces, directly turned into a snake with the thickness of an arm. A fierce bounce turned into a streamer, and instantly appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Soon after, he opened his mouth wide, exposing 2 sharp and stout fangs with twinkling chills, and biting Jian Wushuang's neck fiercely. Illusion Curse of Zombie. Chapter 44-58. 5th is here. On the little snake turned into Delirium Willow, a ray of light flashed over the fangs, biting hard at Jian Wushuang's neck. It all came too fast. As soon as Jian Wushuang didn't respond, the willow's fangs had pierced Jian Wushuang's skin and bitten into the neck. A sudden pain came. Jian Wushuang couldn't help screaming, just stretched out his hand, and was about to pull the delusion off his neck, and saw that the delusion directly turned into a glimmer of light and penetrated into Jian Wushuang's body. What? Instantly, Jian Wushuang surged like a crackling sound. Ha ha ha! From now on, sword unparalleled. I am you, you are me. We two share one. Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth to speak, but in his throat there was a sinful sound completely different from him. The pupils of the pair of purple-gold eyes of Jian Wushuang are rapidly changing, turning into the vertical pupils of faint green. "Get out of my body!" Jian Wushuang's expression was bleary, and he roared. He felt that in his body, an extremely strange power was taking control of his body. This is not a looting. If it is a looting, no one has robbed him of the perfect chaotic creature, Delirium Willow, to accompany him. Ha ha! Sword unparalleled. No need to struggle. This is the curse of the snake god. You can't resist it. Come on, don't resist me. With the cooperation of the two of us, you will have both divine power and virtual power. By then, both universes will be at our feet. We will become the true co-owners. What kind of false god? What of the universe will only become the lingering ants under our feet? We two will sit high in the clouds, overlooking beings, enjoying the supreme power of life and death in the universe. Jian Wushuang, think about it. How wonderful it is. Deep and wicked, with a smirking voice, again from Jian Wushuang's throat. Wu Jianwu opened his mouth, and his tongue turned into a forked snake letter. In a short time, Jian Wushuang completely turned into a half-human, half-monster monster. "I'll say it again, get out!" Jian Wushuang gasped sharply and yelled. Control of the body is his bottom line. He will never allow anyone to touch his finger. Hissing, sword unparalleled, I said, "You can't resist it." "Why do you think I chose you among so many people?" In Jian Jiancha's throat, he made another sound. This scene is weird to the extreme. He is like two people living in one body, one yin and one evil, talking to each other. The words came down, and it was only at this moment that Jian Wushuang really understood the intention of the willow. From beginning to end, everything is carefully calculated. What I did was this moment. Jian Wushuang was silent. He could feel that the power of the willow was constantly wandering in his body, robbing him of his physical control. "Want to take my body?" "Never." There was a madness in Wu Jian's eyes. Even if it is death, it will never be the same. He will never be able to control the flesh together. Universe Base Camp, inside the main hall. Sword warriors. Everyone was taken aback by this mutation. It all came so fast that they didn't respond. Qi Mingming Jian Wushuang also suppressed Absolute Willow with absolute superiority, but in a blink of an eye, the sudden change suddenly occurred, and Willow was fighting for control of Jian Wushuang's body. The dialogue between the two was also transmitted through the screen. It made them jump in their hearts. If Jian Wushuang really agreed to what Lu said, the combination of divine power and virtual power would bring about a real demon evil between heaven and earth. With the talent of sword unparalleled, once he grows up, he will flow between the universe and the virtual universe, and become a peerless demon that no one can subdue. Heiyuan Supreme and others were instantly green. His relationship with Jian Wushuang is not familiar, but in just a few meetings, he already has the feeling of being born to death. Presumptuous. Suddenly, the expression of the of Zhou was gloomy. Photo. He saw that he grabbed his right hand and immediately grabbed the sword Wushuang from the battlefield of the kingdom of God. "Old man, do you want to kill me? Do you have the heart to lose such a genius in your universe?" Wu Jianshou was caught, and he was not half afraid, but instead looked at the Shinto god with no fear. This is an idea he has already made up. It's best to be able to win the sword without a match. Even if he CA&T take away the sword Wushuang, the of the universe wants to burn the jade and stone. He can take away the sword Wushuang. For him, this wave of trading is not a loss. Do you think the husband can do nothing? Wu Zhou God raised his eyelids and said, "Old man, you don't need to bluff me, no matter how strong you are. The practice system of our two universes is completely different. Why can't you be mine?" "Is it?" Wu Zhou grabbed his right hand and Jian Wushuang suddenly seemed to be sucked by the vortex and shot at the palm of Zhou. Divinity, seal? Huh. In that moment, the old 5 fingers of the god of gods spread out and patted it on the head of Jian Wushuang. Instantly, countless soft divine power emerged from the palm of the god, turned into a warm current, and rushed into the body of the sword. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's body trembled wildly. Roar, roar! He squeezed his mouth and made a painful growl. However, the of the universe was expressionless, his big hand pressed firmly on the top of Jian Wushuang's head. Everyone looked at this scene. All of them were upset. After, Jian Wushuang's trembling body gradually calmed down. He closed his eyes tightly and fell into a deep sleep. At his neck, a complicated black rune appeared on his neck. In the middle of the seal, he looked like a snake. Send Sword Wushuang to rest. There was a tinge of tiredness in the eyes of Wu Zhoushan, and he opened his mouth and spoke to Lan Su and Lan Lan, who were standing on both sides. Yes. The 2 disciples quickly responded with congratulations, shooting a gentle divine power, rolling up the sword unparalleled, and walking towards the distant palace. I waited until the 2 left with their swords. Wu Heiyuan Supreme and others looked at each other and quickly asked, Master God, what happened to Jian Wushuang? Is there anything wrong? The Zhou looked at them and said, I have performed the magic and suppressed the 3-headed snake delusion inside Jian Wushuang's body. It should not be a problem to think about it. However, because the divine power is not the same as the virtual power for the sake of it, I can't remove it completely. I can only say that this seems to be okay, but left there, maybe one day it will erupt, and the future will be endless. As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone couldn't help looking at each other, and they felt like they were indifferent. Chapter 44:59. 3 seconds passed in a blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang finally woke up. Wu Jianshou got up from the bed and squeezed his swollen brows with his hands. Then his thoughts surged. He remembers that he was fighting for control with Delia in the battlefield of the kingdom of God, and then his consciousness fell asleep. And now he felt his body carefully, and the delusional willow lurking in him had disappeared, and he had 100% control over his body. But somehow on the right side of his neck, a dark seal rune appeared. What is this rune? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. If he guessed right, the disappearance of Lulu should have something to do with this rune. Creak. As he was thinking, the door of the room was pushed open, and the of the universe stepped in. See, God of the universe. Wu Jianshou quickly arched his hand at him. You're welcome. Wu Zhou God smiled gently and said, Little guy, how do you feel now? Wu Jianshuang replied, No problem. That's good. Zhou God nodded. Then his face became a little serious and said, Jian Wushuang, I just used magical powers to suppress the power of the willow in your body. It's a force, and you do mind it. Relax, naturally you want. There was a moment of thought in Wu Jian's eyes. The 2 chatted a few more words, and after seeing that there was nothing abnormal about Jian Wushuang, Zhoushan left the room. In the room, only Jian Wushuang was left. He sat cross-legged on the bed, continually meditating on the words of the earth. Delirium willow, although it has been sealed, but he is like a time bomb. Maybe it will explode at any time. It is impossible for him to pin his destiny on others. Slap yourself. You must kill the wicked willow that was deposited on him. Then, the first thing you have to do is to understand the structure of virtual force. Only after you understand the virtual force can you have the opportunity to destroy the force left by it. Void, how to understand. After a while, Jian Wushuang thought about nothing and had to stand up and walk towards the outside. Outside the squatter house, a supreme name hurried. Wu Jianshuang, just wanted to say hello to them, but could not help but frown. I saw these supreme glances on his face, and his face was all stunned. Then he evaded vaguely and distanced himself from the sword. Immediately, a whispered sound rang out from their mouths. "Hello, have you heard of it? Jian Wushuang was taken away by the people of the virtual universe." "Yes, it is said that he was still a four-mark vagrant. Hurry up and stay away from him." Although the master of the god used the great magical power to suppress the Su Shi in his body, it was not completely eliminated. That is, the Su Shi in Jian Wushuang may erupt at any time. Yes, don't be afraid of 10,000. Just in case, that's a four-marked virtuoso, and the captain level can't shoot. Who can subdue him? Hurry up, get away from him. Otherwise, if he violently kills, wouldn't we be in danger? After a while of discussion, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but frowned and tightened. "I seem to be isolated." Sun shook her head, and Jian Wushuang did not take it to heart either. "Isolate him just right, and keep quiet." Wu Jianshou stepped forward step by step. Just then, a group of laughter came. When Jian Wushuang was taken away, I saw it with my own eyes. That miserable look is absolutely impossible. I can't describe it. I tell you, it's best to stay away from Jian Wushuang when he sees it. Otherwise, if he violently kills someone, which one is closer to him? Would he just hit his muzzle? Jian Wushuang heard the words, and between the eyebrows there was a coldness. He lifted his eyes and saw a group of ordinary supremes who were surrounded by the black-robed supreme from Diwu Temple, listening to his story. And before speaking, it is the black-robed supreme of this Diwu shrine. It turned out he was fanning the fire behind his back. The cold Meng flashed in Wu Jian's eyes and stepped forward. He remembered that in the main hall, it was exactly what this person said. It was his duty to go to fight with Willow. Even if he went to death, it was for the universe, and it should be crackling. The footsteps sounded. Sui Na was originally listening to the story of the black-robed supreme in Diwu Temple, and everyone with a satisfied face saw Jian Wushuang coming, and suddenly he was stiff, and his face was frozen. Swords are coming. Run! The seal of Jian Wushuang must have been broken. Suddenly, the crowd frightened an excitement and became a bird and a beast. At the same time, the black-robed supreme stunned in his heart and lowered his head to open. "Want to leave?" Wu Jianshou sneered, with 5 fingers stretched out, grabbing directly. Suddenly, the black-robed supreme was like a little chick who was caught and flew directly into the hands of the camera sword, unparalleled. With 5 fingers, he tightened his throat instantly and held it up slowly. Sword, unparalleled. What do you want to do? This is the base camp, and you plan to kill me? The black robe rose with a flush of redness on his face, forcing him to calm down. Don't you dare me? The cold Meng flashed in Wu Jian's eyes, and the 5 fingers suddenly exploded into the sword, pouring into the black robe, supreme body. As long as Jian Wushuang urged him a little, these sword chi that poured into the body of the black robe supreme could instantly hang him and destroy him. The black robe supremely felt the arrogant sword energy in his body, and suddenly a big terror between life and death came to his heart, and his face couldn't help turning white. Sword unparalleled. I didn't mean it. I apologize to you. His lips trembled, flashing begging eyes. Jian Wushuang is the first day of the universe and won the protection of the gods of the universe. He is really not sure whether Jian Wushuang killed him, and will not be punished. If after hearing a half-sentence you fan the flames, chewing the roots of your tongue, you will understand the consequences. Jian Wushuang snorted, and slowly released his hand. The black robe, supreme, suddenly fell on the ground. Get out! Ji Jian looked down at him with no expression on both sides, and said, Yes. The black-robed supreme did not dare to show any dissatisfaction, and hurriedly crawled away. Jian Wushuang saw this, and shook his head. This kind of person just jumped the beam clown. If he wanted to die, he wouldn't be worth the trouble. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang strode away and headed for the 7th team. In the 7th team, Heiyuan Supreme is practicing cross-legged. Team leader. Wu Jianshou arched his hand at him. Never mind. Heiyuan glanced at Jian Wushuang faintly and said, "Sit down. I have something to tell you." "It is good." Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head and swept down to Heiyuan Supreme to sit down. Heiyuan Supreme said, "Sword unparalleled. Our 7th team vice captain returned to Crane Supreme. You should know." Chapter 4460. The 7th team is located in a bamboo forest. The bamboo shoots are green and green. Heiyuan Supreme sat against the sword unparalleled, and his large white owl was on the ground at will. Sword unparalleled. We know that the deputy captain of our 7th team returned to the Supreme Crane. You should know? Heiyuan Extreme asked faintly. "I know." Wu Jianwushuang nodded. The establishment of a squad, including a captain, 2 vice captains, and 10 players. The captain of the 7th team is Heiyuan Supreme. One of the 2 vice captains is the Honorable Supreme who has been with him, and the other is the Gueha Supreme. In the previous battle in the extraterrestrial battlefield, the arm of the virtual came, and countless Supremes died in the hands of the virtual god. Ji Rongjing had good luck and escaped this calamity, but it was not so lucky to return to Heiyuan Supreme, and in the second palm, he died in the hands of the false god. I just had an emergency at the beginning and had no time to worry too much. Now that things have come to an end, naturally I have to replace the deputy captain and replace it with a new one. Sun Heiyuan Extreme glanced at Jian Wushuang. He is not the mother-in-law's character. When he even said, "Jian Wushuang, I mean, it's up to you to serve as the deputy captain of our 7th team. What do you think?" After hearing the words, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, "Isn't the position of captain and vice captain always required to be half-step invincible supreme or top-ranking supreme?" Heiyuan Supreme heard a smile and said, "Sword unparalleled depending on your strength, which top supreme or even half-step invincible supreme can keep you steady. Although you can't fix it, you're in war. Power is no different from the vice captain level." This, Wu Jianwushuang thought for a while and said, "Captain, we came to this extraterrestrial battlefield shortly. I'm afraid I can't convince the public." For the position of deputy captain, Jian Wushuang does not exclude it, but it is optional. But if it will cause many troubles, he will be grateful. Heiyuan Supreme heard a glance and shook his head and said, "Jian Wushuang, you can rest assured that I have communicated with all the players clearly, and they all agree to you as the deputy captain. Speaking of, the candidate for the deputy captain is admire that guy who personally recommended you." Seeing this, Jian Wushuang had no reason to refuse, and he stood up and arched his hand and said, "Then, Jian Wushuang, I would respect it better." "Good." Heiyuan Extreme smiled and nodded. After a while, Jian Wushuang changed into a deputy captain's robe and token, and the members of the 7th team greeted one after another. Hunchun comes to autumn, and the sea changes. In the blink of an eye, 5,000 years passed. In these 5,000 years, Jian Wushuang led the 7th team expeditions to the north and expeditions to the west to suppress the extraterritorial battlefield. He continuously fought with Su Shi in the void of the void. In just 5,000 years, he experienced nearly 10,000 battles. This made him understand more and more about Su Shi. In the past 5,000 years, the sealed 3-headed snake Willow will not be abnormal at first, but the more the force remaining in Willow's body, the more violent it becomes. Especially when Jian Wushuang fought and fell into a state of weakness, the willow will slam the seal frantically, trying to take away his physical body. Even once, the sword was double-faced against the 5-marked class virtuoso, and after using Taro's sword, it was directly controlled by the power of the willow. If Haiyuan's supremacy had suppressed him, and let the Zhou suppress it again, I'm afraid that on that day, Jian Wushuang would be completely demonized and kill the war. However, in these 5,000 years, it is not without gain. Qi Jian's unparalleled reputation completely shocked the entire extraterritorial battlefield and truly convinced the 7th team. Time passed like this. Jian Wushuang led the team to guard the void cracks and did not teach Su Shi to take half a step. As the monks in the extraterrestrial battlefields changed with the killings, some people were constantly transferred from the universe to the extraterritorial battlefields. Among them, the Overlord and Mo Luo Yengu also came one after another. However, in the first battle, Moro Yengu was buried in the hands of a dummy. This also makes Jian Wushuang, parting from life and death, more and more pessimistic and numb. Jian Wushuang thought that the future will be spent like this. An urgent order from the god of Phenom was to transfer him from the void to the base camp. Base camp inside the main hall. Characters at the rank of team leader and vice captain of the 9-9 team are all divided into 2 sides with solemn expressions. Jian Sword Wushuang has a sword hanging on his waist, wearing a white coat and striding forward. After 5,000 years of slaughter, the power of the tailored Excalibur has risen to a new level, and Jian Wushuang, who has always looked cold, has an extra touch of iron and blood between the eyebrows. As he walked into the hall, the people standing on either side of the hall were all brow, only to feel that Jian Wushuang came with blood and blood from his body, and his body was full of sky-high spirits. Sun Bingxian Supreme and Long Qing were the vice captains of the 2nd and 3rd teams respectively, and naturally they were also in the hall. In the past 5,000 years, Jian Wushuang's limelight has been basking in the sun for a day, and it has been a long time ago. They and Jian Wushuang have a life and death feud. At this moment, goodbye to Jian Wushuang. Naturally, there is more dissatisfaction in their hearts. Sword unparalleled, meet thee of the sky. Wu Jianshou knelt down on one knee, said with an arched hand, "Get up." Wu Zhou God smiled, stretched out his hand, raised the sword unparalleled. After I finished all of this, the God of gods swept across the faces of everyone and said, "Everyone must be very confused. Why the old man called you suddenly?" The voice fell down, everyone looked at each other and could see each other's doubts. However, everyone did not speak, but quietly waited for the next chapter of the universe. Wu Zhou was quite satisfied when he saw the situation. After nodding slightly, Shun Sheng said, "The old man received the news in front of him. The Void Universe is very likely to organize a big riot which will impact the cracks in the void and put the whole army under pressure. However, we don't know the exact time of the virtual universe or the deployment of this riot, so the old man is going to draw 5 of you and go deep into the virtual universe to investigate the details of this big riot." As soon as this remark came to an end, the audience was shocked. Deep into the virtual universe, this matter is very trivial and extremely dangerous. As early as when the void crack appeared, the universe sent people to enter the opposite virtual universe. At the beginning of the group of candidates, it was not the others who led the team, but it was the head of the Palace of Life. However, until now, the powerful Lord of Life Jingu Palace has no news, and life and death are unknown. I can say that entering the virtual universe is almost a situation of 9 lives. Everyone in the grand hall looked at each other and took a breath of cold air. Sun Weijian, sword unparalleled. At the moment of hearing this, he suddenly raised his head. His eyes flashed to the extreme. Chapter 4461. Vitality. For Jian Wushuang, he now desperately needs an opportunity to understand the powerlessness in his body. The magic spell left over by Willow has become more and more serious, and it will riot every once in a while. Although there is a god of chaos who will try to suppress it every time, he can never stay outside this domain in the future. On the battlefield, every time you wait for the help of Zhou God, right? This delusion will not be eliminated, and one day, sooner or later, it will cause a catastrophe. Therefore, Jian Wushuang had long wanted to find an opportunity to learn more about Shuli. Now, this opportunity comes. There is no better chance to understand virtual force than to go deep into the virtual universe yourself. Wu Zhoushan glanced, looked at everyone's performance, and said lightly, "Are you afraid?" Everyone, look at me. I look at you, without saying a word. In the battle of the catastrophe of that year, the master of the Life Palace was only half a step away from the of the universe, and the people led by him were all invincible. But Rao is so, none of them came out alive. Nowadays, everyone in the hall talks about cultivation as a far cry from the master of the Palace of Life. How does going to the Palace of Life differ from death? For a moment, everyone hesitated. "Master God, I am Heiyuan willing to go." At this moment, Heiyuan Supreme stepped out and said Shensheng. One after another, several captains stepped out of the crowd. They are the leader of a team and must set an example. When the of the gods saw this situation, they were already covered with Su Hanshuang's face, and then he eased down and said, "People who travel to the virtual universe should not be inferior to the invincible Supreme. Therefore, the 9 captains need not think about it. Go to the virtual universe and be at ease to guard the extraterrestrial battlefield." As soon as his voice fell, the 9 captains could not help but stare at each other, and immediately said, "Master God, what does this mean?" The of the universe thought for a while and groaned and said, "The magnetic field of the virtual universe is completely incompatible with the magnetic field of our universe. Those who live in our universe, the higher the cultivation, the more vulnerable they will be to exclusion and suppression, and the lower the cultivation, or the less repulsion and pressure. Therefore, your invincible Supreme went to the virtual universe, but it was not easy to carry out. But the ordinary Supreme passed away. It was not so conspicuous, and it was more convenient to act. Anyway, you went to the virtual universe this time, just to investigate in secret. It doesn't make much difference whether you are strong or not." Everyone heard the words, and that was all. After the god of Wuzhou finished speaking, he looked at some top Supreme in the hall and half-step invincible Supreme, waiting to see who was willing to go. Standing at the end of the sword Wushuang, his eyes flashed. He knows it's his time. "Master God, my sword Wushuang is willing to go to the virtual universe." Wu Jian stepped out step by step, Shensheng said. After he finished speaking, he was still in a dark crowd, and suddenly he was about to move. I saw a flash of light in Bingyu Supreme's eyes, walked out of the crowd, and said, "Master God, I, Bingyu, is willing to go to the virtual universe for the sake of the universe's life and death plans. I, Bingyu, willing to go to soup and fire, never die." After he finished speaking, he tilted his head slightly, glanced at Jian Wushuang, and sneered in his mouth. Long Qing, who was standing next to the captain of the 3rd team, also realized something and met the eyes of Bingyu Supreme, and then said, "Master God, I am also willing to go to the virtual universe." In the grand hall, the commotion suddenly became even greater. The contradiction between Jian Wushuang, Bingyu Supreme, and Long Qing has spread throughout the universe. Now Jian Wushuang has signed up for the virtual universe, and the two will immediately follow up. What do these two people report? A little guessing will make it clear. Bin Gao, Long Qing, I'm afraid it's false for the two of you to go to the virtual universe. Is it true to end your personal hatred? He also sneered at King Jujia, who was also in the hall. In the 5,000 years of this battle, in addition to the most dazzling performance of Jian Wushuang, the second one is the king of 9 calamities. He, like Jian Wushuang, also has the ability to fight across borders. In an extraterrestrial battle 3,000 years ago, he killed a 4-mark dummy and was promoted to the 9th team vice captain. Next moment, King Jojia arched his hand and said lightly, "Master God, this time traveling to the virtual universe, I must have a seat in Jojian King." As soon as he said this, the turmoil in the hall was even worse. Wherever there are people, there are factions. In the battlefield outside the territory, there were no accidents. In these 5,000 years, in addition to the captain-level figures, 4 factions have been formed with the most dazzling performances of sword warriors, 9 kings, Bingyu Supreme, and Longqing. Wang Jujia, Wang, was originally indifferent to eyes and noses and hearts. He suddenly said that he was going to the empty universe just now. They naturally understood it. Wasn't that afraid that Jian Wushuang was in the virtual universe and was killed by Bingyu Supreme and Longqing? For a while, people from these 4 factions kept coming out and threatened to go to the virtual universe. The whole hall was suddenly noisy and noisy. I looked at the temple that was boiling more and more against the sky, and God's face couldn't help glooming, and it was getting ugly. At last, Wu Zhoushan repeatedly patted the table and said coldly, "Enough! Are you going to the virtual universe to swim in the mountains?" Howl. Suddenly, the whole audience looked like a chill. They all bowed their heads, and the crickets no longer spoke. The light of the eyes of Wu Zhou shone for a while, and when he saw the crowd no longer speak, he snorted coldly, "Let us go, this time." The person who went to the virtual universe, the old man came to pick up, yes. Everyone bowed his head obediently and did not dare to speak. Lingyu Supreme, Extreme Ram, Morocco Supreme. The eyes of Wu Zhou glanced over the faces of everyone, and the soldiers were nodded. My Lingyu/Ram/ Bingyu leads. The 3 of them immediately walked out of the crowd, and they should be. Jian Wushuang saw this. His brows frowned. This time to the virtual universe. He must go. As soon as he was going to take the initiative to ask him again, the God of God walked away and finally fixed himself on Jian Wushuang. Sword unparalleled. My sword is unparalleled. Yan Jian's eyes twinkled. It should be. 4 of you set off 3 days later, through the fissures of the void, to the void universe, to inquire about the news. Wu Zhoushan said with a deep voice, with a big wave of his hand, the 4 people who traveled to the virtual universe this time were shot down. The 4 of you must remember that this is the main source of inquiry, and you must be extremely careful not to expose your breath. Otherwise, even the old man cannot save you. You will die. Finally, the Zhou looked deeply at the 4 of them. Chapter 4462. Yes. Pu Jian Wushuang, Lingyu, Ram, Bingyu Supreme, etc. all have their pupils narrowed. As the of the universe said, the crisis in the virtual universe is pervading. Once the 4 of them are exposed, the entire universe will be bombarded. Don't say it's the 4 of them. Even if they are invincible, they will never be alive. Well, let it go. It'll send the treasure that can be hidden later to your palace. Wu Zhou God said. Afterwards, everyone disappeared. When Sun walked out of the hall, Bingyu Supreme turned his head and smiled at Jian Wushuang Mori. The meaning of the threat is beyond words. Qi Jian Wushuang ignored him, but walked out side by side with the 9 kings and overlords. Leader, when you go, I'm afraid that Bingyu is not at ease. Overlord said, a little worried. In this universe, we are not afraid of him, but Once we go to the virtual universe, no one knows what's going on. In case that guy holds the same thoughts and fights with you in the virtual universe, to the breath will be exposed. Wu Jianshuang could not help but smile, and heard his words, looked at him, shook his head and replied, "Relax, he dare not." "Don't dare? Lord, what does this mean?" Overlord heard a word. Wu Jianshuang did not answer, but the next king of the 9 robbers sneered back because he is afraid of death. The king of tyrants looked at Jian Wushuang and Zhou Jiawang, who looked at each other with a smile and couldn't help it. "Well, don't worry. Binyu Supreme does not have the courage to dare to fight against Jian Wushuang in the Void Universe, but he will definitely make some secret trips which can't be avoided." The 3 of them said as they walked out of the hall and stopped. King Jiujia turned to look at Jian Wushuang, and Shun said, "Sword Wushuang, I won't say much about this seat. In short, be careful." "Okay, you are here, and you are also careful about that guy, Long Qing, who has been deliberately looking for opportunities to retaliate, and now I leave, I'm afraid he will put the spear on you." Wu Jian Wushan said in a deep voice, "Only him." There was a scorn of contempt on the king's face. 7th team, inside the bamboo house. Wu Heiyuan supremely explained Xiang Jian Wushuang a few words, and then left the bamboo house. He is free-spirited, and although he does not take a risk to the swordless universe, since the universe has decided, he will not be upset by the pretense of pretending to be contrived. As he said, as early as when he went to the extraterrestrial battlefield, everyone should have the consciousness of hanging his head on his belt and dying at any time. Before long, Lan Lan knocked on the door of the bamboo house. "Master Blue." Wu Jianso nodded at her. "Sword Wushuang, didn't you say that? Don't call me Lord Lan. It seems too polite. Just call me Xiao Lan." Tong Lan Lan said with a smile. "Okay." Wu Jianwushuang touched his nose dumbly. "This Lan Lan, I am afraid that he will be dozens of times of chaos." The 2 greetings made a few words, and immediately they saw Lan Lan flipping his right hand and took out a black waistband saying, "Sword unparalleled. This is specially made by my master some time ago, and it can be blocked to some extent. Stay in the breath of divine power. This is the root of your journey to the virtual universe. It is good." Yen Jianwushuang's face swelled with dignity and took over this waist card. Suddenly, a soft light surged from the waistband, turning it into an invisible mask, covering the sword incomparably. The sword's magical breath suddenly disappeared slowly. At the same time, there is some news about the virtual universe, which is released in Jian Wushuang's mind. Sword unparalleled. Although this waist card can cover the breath of divine power on your body, but the biggest feature of the virtual universe is that it cannot be imitated. Lan Lan Su Rong said. "Illness? An explosion?" Jian Jianwu's eyes narrowed. "Yes." Bien Lan Lan nodded and replied, "One of the imaginary marks and the virtual explosion is their supernatural power evolution, and the other is their realm evolution. This cannot be replaced or imitated. Therefore, when you go to the virtual universe, you must control it so that there is no fighting, and you should not let people see your left shoulder. There are no virtual marks." "Understood." Qi Jian Wushuang nodded thoughtfully. Pu Lanlan replied, "Okay, then I'll go first. Take care." 23 days later, the 4 men, Sword Master Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, led by God of the Era, came to the void crack. For people, if the old man didn't guess wrong, the imaginary universe opposite should be the periphery of a sect door. If you can, you and the other 4 must join this door to explore the news. Also, the old card given to you by your husband can send news from the virtual universe at any time. If you find out anything, you must send the news back as soon as possible. Wu Zhou stood with his hands up, exhorted. Yes. The 4 of them nodded, and without hesitation stepped into the void. Howl! Wu Jinshuang only felt the darkness in his eyes, and then turned around. It seems that the whole world is turning over quickly. Alas! As if through the endless time and space, the universe is flooded, and immediately a bright light is constantly enlarged in front of the eyes. Huh! Jianwushuang fell, jumping out of a black hole. This is the virtual universe. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes and raised his eyes to look around. I saw a green hill come in, and there was the sound of gurgling streams in my ears. A monster with a 4-horse horse, a human head, and a halberd is staring at them. On his left shoulder, a long mark is particularly dazzling, a mark-level fictitious person. Enemy. The next moment, the celebrity's monster was hitting his spirits, and he was about to scream, "Not good!" When everyone saw this, their hearts were sinking. This monster with a stingy body must be sent by the Void Universe, who is responsible for guarding this void crack. Just when everyone dared to take action, Jian Wushuang already turned into a sword on and sprinted past in an instant. The sky was torn almost instantaneously, and the monster on the top of the horse just shouted an enemy character. Jian Wushuang had split it with a sword and cut his entire body. Soon after, Jian Wu's eyes twinkled in the light, and with a big wave of his hand, Zhen Tianbei was used by him to suppress the monster fiercely. All these actions are coming to an extreme. By the time the other three reacted, Jian Wushuang had done everything. Seeing this, Ling Yu, Ram, and Bing Yu Supreme all looked at each other with a long breath in their hearts. I was okay, I stopped it in time. Otherwise I was just afraid that the voice just shouted, and they were exposed. Jian Wushuang, I'm waiting for you. Shi Ling Yu and the Ram supremely arched their hands in surprise, saying gratefully. It was the supreme ice-cold humming, with no saltiness, no gratitude on his face. Chapter 4463. Well, I don't want to stay here too much. I'll wait until I leave. Qi Jian Wushuang closed Jintianbei and said, Yes. Supreme Master Ling Yu and Supreme Master Ram responded quickly, while Supreme Master Bingyu glanced at Jian Wushuang in an oblique manner with a strange tone of yin and yang. Why? Is this your captain? Let everyone... Wu Jian Wushuang ignored him. If this place is not a virtual universe, he would have stabbed him with a sword. Even though the saying on the mouth of Sun Bingshu and Supreme was to follow a sword Wushuang, he was rushing towards a mountain peak. Rumble! A hole was blasted in the peak of Lao's Han Mountain, and Jian Wushuang took the lead and walked in. Snapped! Wu Tianbei was waved by Jian Wushuang, suspended in front of everyone. Tianjin Tianbei is a magic weapon for space confinement. It was originally of little use to Jian Wushuang, but it was unexpected that it played a role in the virtual universe today. In the town monument of Cheongjin, they turned into thumb-sized monsters and looked at the four people nervously. You, who are you? What do you want to do? I am the three elders of alchemy. I urge you to quickly release me. Otherwise, once our alchemy is taught and found that I am missing, some of you will enter the earth and escape can't hunt. As soon as this remark came to an end, Jian Wushuang and Ling Yu Supreme looked at each other, both frowning. It seems this person doesn't know about the universe. Also, this place is called Lian Shenzong. Wu Jianshuang cleared his throat and asked hoarsely, Do you still want to ask who we are? I slept here a long time ago. You disturbed our slumber. What? You sleep in this void forbidden? The monster, who was stunned by the head and horse, was shocked, and then quickly said, Senior, the little inadvertently disturbed the senior's sleep. Please let the senior ignore the villain and let the villain go. Snapped. He saw the two legs in front of him soften and fell down on his knees, immediately scratching his head like pounding garlic. Jian Wushuang saw this, with a faint smile in her heart. It seems that this guy in front of him can be used as a waystone for the first time in the virtual universe. He converged his thoughts, and Jian Wushuang continued to ask with a hoarse voice. This one asks you, why are your refining gods here? What is the situation outside now? Upon hearing that, the monster on the head of the pony has no doubt that he was there, and returned quickly. Senior, every void period in this void forbidden area will be guarded by one of the top forces in the universe. In recent years, we have been guarded again by our refining gods. Oh, have you been practicing the sect of God before guarding it? Wu Jianshuang frowned. The situation is a bit wrong. You must know that in his universe, there are constant wars and extraterritorial battlefields, and there are continuous virtual men pouring out through the void cracks. If it wasn't for the of the universe, he would have feared that the universe had already been breached. But looking at this person, there is no doubt about his appearance. He has no doubt whether it is from another universe. Then it proves that this person should be unaware of the existence of a different universe. Moreover, if those vagrants who attacked the universe, they attacked the universe through the void, cracks they just appeared. Then this person cannot fail to know. They just appeared, and it's impossible to be guarded by just this one. There must be something he didn't know. After 3 hours, Wu Jianso walked out of the cave. His eyes flashed with thought. Through the side-by-side attack, just now, he finally got some information. The place here is called the Void Forbidden Area. Here, like the far north of the universe, where Jian Wushuang is located, it belongs to the forbidden space of the virtual universe. In this void, there are a number of unclear void cracks. This void crack is different from the void cracks produced by the powerful fight against the broken void of the universe. These void cracks lead to the heavens and heavens. No one knows where exactly these cracks will lead. I only know that, generally, those who enter the void crack can rarely come out again. What's more, every other virtual era, there will be different top forces in the virtual universe to defend the void. He is now guarding the forbidden land of the void, and is not far from here. Refining Shinzong is the top sect of the universe. The vassals in the sect are mainly corpses. The biggest card is to suppress a huge and immortal unnamed corpse, according to the monster on the head of the man, except for the inner teaching of Zhong Nei and the most important existence of the elder Tai Shang. Even he could not touch the unknown fairy corpse. Jian Wushuang, the situation is almost clear. What should we do next? Sun, Lingyu Supreme stepped out of the cave and said to Xiang Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, Jingguang flashed in his eyes and said, in my guess, it is impossible for refining Shinzong to not know about our universe, but this person's status is too low to reach the core. Things in this universe should be like our universe, news has been blocked, and only the top people in the universe know about it. Therefore, if we really want to find out their deployment plan of attacking our universe, it is just useless to just inquire about it. It is probably useless. There is only one way, that is. Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang's words stopped, and he turned to look forward to Lingyu Supreme, and said with a burning gaze, that is to enter the refining God sect. At this moment, the Ram Supreme and the Ice Cricket Supreme also came out, and when they heard the words of Jian Wushuang, they couldn't help but be shocked. Absolutely no way. Refining Shinzong as the top sect of the virtual universe, there must be an invincible and supreme level 6 marked victories. If we go in, we are in danger of being discovered at any time. Yes, this is too risky. Supreme Lingyu and Supreme Ram shook their heads again and again. Supreme Master Bingbing even dismissed a sneer, and sneered, no, brainless husband, if you just rush into the refining divine sect like this, what's the difference between sending death? Is that so? Jian Wushuang was not annoyed at the sight, but raised his eyebrows and said gently, what do you mean? Of course, it's lurking down. from a long-term perspective, slowly figure it out. Bing stood supremely and returned proudly. Stupid. Wu Jianwushuang glanced at him and sneered. Now, the universe will be under pressure at any time, and the universe will be attacked through the cracks in the void. When you come down slowly, I can go back to the universe to collect the dead. You. Suddenly angry, Yan Bingxian heard his words full of divine power, and he wanted to fight against the sword, unparalleled. Come, just because the last battle was too late to kill you completely, you were rescued by the Emperor Taishu, and you just waited to die here as you said. It would be better for me to kill you first. Wu Jianshou twisted his neck and looked back at him without fear. Suddenly, the air condensed. Chapter 4464. In the void, a surge of sword-strength breath continued to radiate from Jian Wushuang and Bing Yu Supreme. Bing's face full of anger, staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly, his eyes spitting fire. Sword and sword unparalleled, looked back at him with the same cold eyes. In this virtual universe, he is unwilling to have conflicts and wants to try to take the overall situation as much as possible, but this does not mean that he will be bullied by others, and the Bingyu Supreme will be able to step on his head. Okay, what are you doing? We are here to inquire about the news, not to fight internally. The Ram Supreme and the Mingyu Supreme hurried round the road. Bing Extreme heard a complexion in the face for a while, then finally snorted, "Don't go over," and didn't speak again. Jian Wushuang saw this and could not help but sneer. Fortunately, this battle stopped before the outbreak. Lingyu Supreme took a deep breath. Dear everyone, I agree with Jian Wushuang's opinion. Now that the situation is urgent, I can only wait for the time to quickly explore the real news of the virtual universe and return it to the Lord God. Only adults can make arrangements. Otherwise, even if I stay here and lurk down, I just waste time. I agree. After a moment of thought, the cricket, Ram nodded and said. Immediately, the three looked at Bingyu Supreme. Bingao, what do you think? Extreme cannot help looking even more ugly. Don't all three of you make a decision? You still need to ask me what you are doing? Bingshuan snorted extremely, which is also a promise of this plan. Then the most critical question now is how to enter the refining deities. Wu Lingyu Supreme asked. The three men of Jian Wushuang did not speak, but frowned. Look, should we sneak in? The cricket Ram extremely scratched his back and asked. Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, could not help but glanced at him, and said lightly, "No, it's really trying to die if you go in this way." Several people discussed for a while, and the plans were all rejected by Jian Wushuang. The Ram Supreme could not help but say, "This won't work. That won't work either." Jian Wushuang, then you talk about what we should do go in. Jian Wushuang did not rush back to him, but glanced back at the cave, the Remy horse monster that was suppressed in the town monument, and said, "Go in brightly." Huh? What? Go in brightly? Isn't that really looking for death? Sword unparalleled, I think you still obediently back aside. Let this seat take command. As soon as he said this, the Ram Supreme and the Spirit Jade Supreme were both absent-minded, while the Ice Cricket Supreme was sneer. Jian Wushuang heard the words and did not talk about the Bingyu Supreme, but looked at the Ram Supreme and Lingyu Supreme and said, "You forgot what the monster with the horse head said just now. Is the Yingjie who is refining the world, is it an apprenticeship? For us, as long as we are careful, the possibility of entering the refining deities is not small, and once we enter, we are generally not suspected." He compares his heart to his heart. Are you and the other lords who have opened up a force in this universe, will you suddenly suspect that one of the disciples is a fake person posing? You won't even think about it at all, but if you sneak into it, once caught, you will be immediately suspected, and various investigations will be launched. At that time, even if we didn't find out that we were from another universe, we would definitely be directly imprisoned or killed. The words of Jian Wushuang fell, and all three frowned, thinking carefully about the feasibility of the words spoken by Jian Wushuang. Yes, because of their strength, they want to see through their authenticity. Unless they are the strongest level of refining Shinzong, can they see through their authenticity when they show their flaws? While they came in as the most powerful group in the universe, would they notice the selection of disciples? I&T, the most, but just a little attention, the most talented ones. Therefore, this seems the most dangerous way to enter the refining Shinzong, but it is the safest. All of you, our greatest difficulty is when we enter the refining deities. No one knows what their entry assessment is. Unknown means danger. You should think carefully. Qi Jian Wushuang said something, and after speaking, they would no longer care about them. For Jian Wushuang, this time it is imperative to go to refining Shinzong, not only to explore the news of the virtual universe invading the universe, but more importantly, he must go in to understand the structure of virtual force. Only in this way can he understand the virtual force, and then completely solve the time bomb tied to himself, the three-headed snake Willow. Ask for wealth and wealth. Fight. The risk is high, but it also means that the gain is high. The Ram Supreme and the Spirit Jade Supreme looked at each other, and then they bit their teeth and decided. And Bing Extreme. The eyes are blinking. I don't know what I'm thinking about. It's not until a moment has passed before saying okay. Immediately, the four men knocked side by side and learned from the monster's mouth that the head of the horse was the exact time for the reincarnation of Shinzong. After waiting until there was no question at all, Jian Wushuang took the monster of the head and horse together with the town of Tianbei together into the Qianquan Ring. Zongmen, the top of the virtual universe similar to Lian Shinzong, etc. Zongmen must have a life card with a record of life and death. Once this head of the monster is dead in their hands, the life card is broken, only afraid that the refining Shinzong will soon move. He put them into the Changchuan Ring. And when the refining deities came to the reaction, when the elders in the rain disappeared, they had already entered the refining deities. After doing all of this, the four of them changed their looks and turned into monsters, rushing towards the Lian Shinzong. Wu Jian Wushuang turned into a weird man with pointed ears and long wings, while Lingyu Supreme and others were either monsters with crystals or sheep-headed monsters. It's too easy for them to be the Supreme. Alas, a blast of fresh wind blew through the ears of the four, and it didn't take long for the four to cross the starry sky, and they saw a towering mountain peak soaring above the stars. Refining Shinzong, here it is, beneath the mountain peak. Hundreds and thousands of vagrants with different breaths and strengths were waiting outside the gate of the Shinzong mountain. These monsters are born in a variety of ways, and the swords look like four people. In this group of monsters, it is nothing more than ordinary, insignificant. Let's go. The three men of Jian Wushuang glanced at each other, took a deep breath, and did not care about the sudden disappearance for a while before the reappearance of the Ice Mastiff Supreme, striding towards the position of Lian Shinzong Mountain Gate. Chapter 4465. Under the gate of Lian Shinzong Mountain, there was a disturbance and there was a noise. Su Shi from all directions are gathered here, some cross-knee meditation, silent practice of power, and some everywhere to talk to people, want to forge good destiny. The four men of Jian Wushuang saw each other and could not help looking at each other. It seems that the vain people of this imaginary universe are not much different from this universe. According to the monster on the head of the human horse, if you want to worship the refining God, you must reach the star level, which is the mastery of the universe. I looked around. At this moment, when I came to refining Shinzong to worship the mountain gate, they were basically 2-star to 7-star priests, that is, the second-level master in this universe, and the monks who were almost invincible. Seeing this, Wu Jianshuang and other people also reduced the cultivation to the level of dominance, under the waist card made by the of the god. The breath revealed by the 4 people was immediately no different from those around them. In order to reduce the risk of exposure, Jian Wushuang and others did not talk to the surrounding Susher, but quietly sat cross-legged, waiting for Lian Shinzong to open the mountain gate. Time flies. There are more and more Susher coming around refining Shinzong. Among them there is even a trace of Susher strong. A mark, the corresponding, is the elementary supreme in this universe. In the universe where Jian Wushuang is located, once they step into the supreme realm, it is the power to overlook the universe. All of them are not only one hegemon, or the mainstay of the top sect, the top combat power. After a month, rumble. The gate of the refining Shinzong suddenly opened, and thunders transformed by countless powerless forces breathed and exuded a powerful breath. A middle-aged man, wearing sackcloth, a coffin on his back, tied with a blue rope around his waist, a green body, and 2 tentacles on his head, stepped out of the mountain door step by step. Refining Shinzong, it is not other things, but corpses. According to the monster with the head and horse's head, there is a coffin mountain in the refined god sect. The mountain is full of coffins. Lying inside the coffin are various powerful corpses that have long fallen from the universe. Every disciple of the refining god sect, after entering the refining god sect, will enter the coffin mountain, refining one of his own corpses. This is precisely the reason why the Emperor Shinzong is refining, and the trace-level virtual princes in Mingzong are not too many, but they can dominate the virtual universe. Because once the corpse of the is refined, it is equivalent to owning an even more powerful clone helper on his own basis. This is the root of the universe where the refining gods relied on to crush the void. The person who had a tentacle refining Shinzong had a strong breath. As soon as Fong stepped out, he exclaimed in the crowd, "I didn't think that this time the elder of the supreme religious sect had to visit the town. The elder must be a 3-mark vagrant. What's the situation?" This is the first time that Lian Shinzong has received his disciples and sent a strong man who is too senior to the elder level. The discussion sounded loudly, and everyone's expressions were unbelievable. Among those who came to worship the sect of refining sect, the Susher who had been on the mark was originally a high and unreserved appearance. After seeing this elder of the gods, he bowed his head and did not dare to maintain the slightest pride. Attitude. I saw 2 tentacles on the top of the head, and the whole body skin was green. The elder mustache, his eyes were as plain as water, swept across the faces. And then he said, "This time we refined the sacred religion to recruit disciples, and this seat was personally seated by the seat. Some muddy waters to fish and robbers, it is best to quickly retreat. Otherwise, once the seat is found, we will blame this seat for not being emotional." As soon as this remark was made, there was a commotion in the crowd. Nearly 100 virtual men. A flash of strife flashed on his face, and sometimes he looked at the elder of God, and sometimes looked down and thoughtfully, and finally had to sigh and retreat obediently. Yes, every time the refining Shinzong widely recruits his disciples, when he admits his disciples, there will be some bad people with bad intentions. He joined the refining Shinzong only for the corpses. Elder God Su looked at the people who had retreated from the crowd, nodded with satisfaction, and then said in a deep voice, "Then this seat announces that the Shinzong introductory examination will begin now." Boom! The words of the crickets fell, and a huge stone foundation appeared in front of everyone. "What is that?" Ling Lingyu Supreme and Ram Supreme narrowed their eyes and whispered. Wu Jianwushuang thought about it and said, "It is estimated that It is a testing instrument used to test the talent, or how well it fits with the practice of refining Shinzong. Aren't we? The Ram Supreme looks worried. Don't talk about talent. They are not the people of this universe at all. Look at it. Wu Jian Wushuang thought back. Upon hearing the words, the Ram Supreme and Lingyu Supreme glanced at each other, then nodded helplessly. Bien is the Supreme Bingyu, this time without a word stabbed sword Wushuang a few words, making Jian Wushuang quite surprised, cannot help frowning. Before coming to refining Shinzong, Bingyu Supreme disappeared for a while, and then when he came back to meet them, he became dumb and looked quite demented. What is he doing? Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, and there was a slightly ominous premonition in his heart. At the same time, the assessment officially kicked off. He saw the elder god must point to the suspended stone in the air and said in a deep voice, "This thing is a talent detection stone. One is to detect your waiting talents, and the other is to check how well you and I practice Shinzong practice. You only need to line up one by one later. Just step on this cornerstone. By then, this cornerstone will naturally be evaluated with your talents and suitability to show the light. Of course, the flickering of the cornerstones has proven that you are talented and able to stay. But if the cornerstones do not respond at all, it is a pity that you are not qualified enough to pass the selection. Wherever you come from, please return back. Go, do NT enter our refining deities." Elder Godbeard said that he glanced at the crowd and continued, "There are 4 types of light shining from the trial stone. Red is inferior, blue is medium, purple is superior, and gold represents with superior qualifications." The appraisers nodded their heads when they heard the words. They all looked proud and full of fighting spirit. Obviously, they had already heard the test of the cornerstone of the trial and were fully prepared. Well, now that everyone understands the rules, let's start the assessment. Later, according to Xiu's strength, the people who came to the assessment automatically set up a long dragon under the gate of the Lian Shinzong. Yan, Jian Wushuang, and others have cultivated themselves to suppress 3-star virtual men, but they are not conspicuous, ranking slightly behind. It has started. The 4 men of Jianjian Wushuang looked at each other and took a deep breath. Whether you can enter the refining God sect and explore the deployment of the virtual universe, the first step is now. Chapter 4466. Rumble. With the order of the Elder Godbeard, hundreds of disciples have begun their majestic assessment. A 4-star sous-chef who had 3 heads and 6 arms came to the front of the trial cornerstone. He breathed a breath, sighed, stepped out, and stepped on the trial cornerstone suspended in the void. The trial stone did not move, but a strong red light suddenly burst out and hovered over everyone's head. Red light, inferior qualification. Everyone looked up at the top of their heads. Some people looked disdainful, but most of them looked at the 4-star sous-chef with a hint of envy. After all, the evaluation of the refining Shinzong is notoriously rigorous. Once there were geniuses who had qualified in other sects, or the vain who had already made a big name in the universe. An inferior qualification. So, as Elder Godbeard said, as long as the trial stone can shine for you, it already represents your extraordinary talents, and the god of religion will recruit you. The 4-star sous-chef looked at the thick red light above his head with a look of joy, but there was still a dimness in his eyes, apparently not satisfied with his inferior qualifications. The elder god must take a look at the 4-star sous-chef, then withdrew his gaze and announced with no expression, "Red light, inferior." Suddenly, in the rich red light in the sky, a purple light suddenly appeared. Although the purple light was extremely thin like the wind blows away, it floated a little and finally hovered on top of the red light. Okay? The elder god's indifferent expression changed instantly, and his eyebrows were raised slightly, looking again at the 4-star virtuoso, who had no expression on his face, smiled and said, "Congratulations, purple light, medium talent." It is not surprising that God must change the attitude of the elders. Even many people who have assessed have paid more attention to the 4-star virtual priests. It is necessary to know that those who practice the divine sect disciples have flashed purple light in this talent test stone. In the future, the worst achievements will also be 7-star virtual men. In the face of this rising star, the people who go to the knot will naturally be in the minority. 24-star Su sure laughed loudly, was full of heroism, and was full of heroism. He strode to the right of the square, where he could pass the examination, and stood under the gate of the Lian Shinzong mountain. The other disciples who practiced Shinzong, looking at the 4-star Su sure below, also looked slightly, showing a kind smile. Soon, another weird-looking duke walked to the cornerstone of the trial. This man was trained to be a 5-star duke, and he was even higher than the previous one. I saw his expression was excited, and his steps were heavy. As soon as he stepped on, he flew up and landed on the cornerstone of the trial. And this time, the trial cornerstone remained motionless, but the light never flickered. For a moment, the weird-looking Su sure seemed to have foreseen something, frowning, and he struck once again, stepping on the black stone fiercely. The final result remains unchanged. No light flashes. Damn, how could this be? The weird-looking Su sure paused for a moment, and then roared, stepping down on the cornerstone of the trial with a sullen face. However, no matter how he trampled on, and no power broke out, the cornerstone of the trial didn't react at all. Sun's weird-looking Su sure was unwilling and waved his fist desperately. He couldn't accept such an ending. At this moment, the elder man on the platform waved his sleeve, a white halo hit, and the weird man with a strange appearance floated out of the gate. The elder Godbeard shook his head and said lightly, "Next! The appraisers are all with their hearts in mind. This is the cruelty of practice. Once you set foot on this road, you will never have a chance to turn back. You can only climb up desperately, and you cannot tolerate the slightest slack, otherwise you will be eliminated." The 4 men of Jianjian Wushuang stood behind and looked at the scene expressionlessly. "It's our turn," said the Supreme Ram a little nervously. After all, they are not people in the virtual universe. The cultivation system is completely different. Even if they have the tokens given by the gods of the universe, they just hide the breath of divine power in them. As for whether they can be detected by the test bedrock, there is no bottom in my heart. One after another, there are people who have passed the test of the trial cornerstones, among which even Jingguang Mantian has reached the super qualification, I suddenly exclaimed in the crowd. Even the elder, the beard who always had no expression on his face and a mild smile on his face, reached out his hand and brought the super qualified person into the gate. Chi chaos qualifications represent that this person has entered the trace level in the future, and it is already a sure thing. Next person. In the voice of Elder Godbeard, the ram took a deep breath and stepped out. He is a supreme practice, and he is also used to the strong winds and waves in the universe, and he is on the top of his side. However, at this moment, he was nervous and sweating on his forehead. Here is the Void Universe, the top force of the Void Universe, with the 6-marked Su shure's base camp for refining Shinzong. Once tadpoles are found, they are likely to fall here. Sword is unparalleled. Will the rams be okay? Supreme Master Lingyu was beside him, and asked a little worried, "Do not know." Qi Jian Wushuang stared at the back of the Ram Supreme gradually, and his heart became extremely extreme. The name of the visitor is coming. The elder god had to glance at the Ram supremely and said lightly in his eyes, "The Ram Supreme covered by the back of the god's waist card is no different from an ordinary 3-star vagrant. Here is the sheep. The cricket Ram Supreme arched his hand and reported a pseudonym. "Well, you start." The elder god must give him a slight look and said, "Yes." Ram nodded supremely, but stepped out, walking on the sky, one step on the cornerstone of the trial. At this moment, not only the Ram Supreme, but also the three masters, such as Ling Yu Supreme and Jian Wu Shuang, are extremely nervous. "My breath is over." 2 breaths passed. After 9 full breaths passed, the trial cornerstones did not respond, and no light was emitted. It should be that we are not people in this universe, so no talent can be detected. Wu Lingyu Supreme thought, and said, "This result, although somewhat disappointing, is not unacceptable. After all, as long as no identity is revealed, everything can be discussed in the long run." He thinks not only of Lingyu Supreme, but also of the Ram Supreme on the cornerstone of the trial, even the God-bearer. Talent is 0 back down. He was just when God required the elders to speak indifferently, and the Ram Supreme resigned. Ding. Ding, 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 dash. Ding, 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 ding. The cornerstone of the trial, a sharp alarm sounded suddenly.